minds of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, July 7th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, calls explicit and implicit grow among elected Democrats for President Biden to step aside. Meanwhile, White House launches it's Wednesday, July 3rd. White House launches belated blitz to push back and show Biden is up to the task. Convicted felon Donald Trump's New York hush money sentencing pushed back as prosecutors in court consider conviction in light of the SCOTUS immunity ruling. FDA approves a new drug for Alzheimer's. 12 former U.S. officials sign a letter accusing the Biden administration of violating U.S. law and of complicity in the Gaza slaughter. Meanwhile, Israel approves its largest theft of Palestinian land in the West Bank in over 30 years since the Oslo Peace Accords. COVID cases rise in 44 states. Biden administration reiterates obligations of doctors to provide emergency abortions regardless of state limits. In the wake of Supreme Court remanding a case last week, the melting of Alaska Juneau's ice field is losing snow 5 times faster than in the 80s. FDA bans use of BVO, bromided vegetable oil, in sodas and snacks in this country. And the FTC blocks the merger of Sealy and Mattress Firm. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Folks, we're getting some weird issues apparently on TikTok. Did you see that, Matt? Getting some reports of weird issues on TikTok. And yeah, I had look, folks, I was traveling in Europe last week, and that's why I got the...
Oh, last week? Didn't you get back 12 days ago?
12 days ago.
Oh, that jet lag can last.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry about that Thursday-Friday thing. Thursday mix. We will be off tomorrow for 4th of July. And also on Friday. However, Friday we will have a new show for you where we've got Rick Perlstein, who I interviewed actually before a lot of the stuff that happened this week. But I think the tone of the interview is consistent with where we are at. And first off, I should say, sorry, really losing it. Emma, what's today?
Today is Hump Day.
It's actually like really, it's almost the end of the week for us. Yep. I got to say, though, it is, we are going off. We're going to be not here tomorrow or Friday. There is a sort of there's the law of news happens when I'm not on the show, but because you will also be off, I think probably we will be waiting until Monday until there's any more major news.
That's how this law of our broadcast typically works. Although, if we're both out, perhaps we could have some sort of double big news situation, like Biden drops out and Netanyahu drops dead. I mean, I'm thinking really positively there.
All right, let's get Emma's wish casting aside.
Well, I'm in a positive mood. You know, it's really nice. Like, it's so freeing to be able to unburden myself from what has been and move myself over to the K-Hive now. You know, I'm crossing previous lines between the Bernie Bros and the K-Hive and bringing everybody together to support this movement. You know, buzz, buzz.
Let's get into this. We've got a lot to talk about. Things are moving very, very quickly, it seems. Yesterday, we mentioned this on the show, but hadn't seen the video at that time. Representative Lloyd Doggett from Texas, Texas 37th District, was on with MSNBC's Hallie Jackson yesterday. Doggett is one of the longest serving congressmen in Congress, at least
since 95.
Since 1995. He's also one of the older, you know, in his early 80s. He's probably on the left side of the spectrum of Democrats, but certainly entrenched in the mainstream. And so this was a big deal. And from what I've read, he also just felt like he had some type of obligation to do it because he was older. And here is Representative Lloyd Doggett, the first elected Democrat to come out and basically say that Biden should step aside.
Somebody who has been quite direct about how he feels about the situation. And that, of course, is Congressman Lloyd Doggett. Congressman, thank you so much for being on with us.
Good to join you this afternoon.
So you write that that you did not come to this decision lightly. Can you explain why you ultimately did decide to speak out publicly at this moment today?
You know, when my wife and I watched the debate last Thursday, we were so hoping for the momentum to overcome the lag that we've had in the last year. Instead, we were disappointed to see lies by Trump not refuted effectively and effective defense of the successes of the Biden administration. I was so moved by that evening that the next morning I was out to talk on the floor of Congress with our leadership and with as many of my colleagues as I could find to express the view that it was time for a replacement and for President Biden to step aside. Coming home to Texas this weekend, I would say that the input from my constituents has been 10-1 in favor of replacing President Biden on the ticket. And then with the Supreme Court decision on Monday, we know that if a criminal and his gang take over the White House, there will be no checks and balances from the courts, and a real danger that we could get a Republican Congress where he's basically empowered to do whatever he wants in the way of recrimination and revenge against his opponents and all the horrible policies that he would institute at home and abroad.
So there you have it. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And one thing that also strikes me about that is we're going to hear a lot more about the Biden administration achievements than Joe Biden's achievements over the next couple of days. Following Lloyd Doggett in the afternoon on MSNBC, Jamie Raskin was on Chris Hayes in the evening, and he was there to talk about the immunity ruling, but then this happened.
Well, look, you know, we are the party of democracy and freedom right now, and everybody is asking one question within the Democratic Party. And I know that's true of President Biden and Vice President Harris and my friend Lloyd Doggett and everybody in the House and the Senate and all of the members of the Democratic Party, the tens of millions of people across the country, which is how do we defeat Donald Trump? And how are we going to defeat the threat of authoritarianism and keep the progress of democracy and freedom moving forward in the country? And we are not operating like an authoritarian religious cult the way that the Republican Party operates now. There will be lots of discussion and lots of people weighing in. And I know this is a moving target. It's got to happen quickly. But I can guarantee you, Chris Hayes, there will be massive unity and focus on that task when we get to the end of this process. And it's happening very quickly, I think.
What process?
There's a process going on, apparently. And we're going to get to the end of this process soon. I was not, if you believe that Joe Biden is the candidate and there is no, and that is it, there is no process. There is, we need to move past this. Now, we should say that the Biden White House has announced that he's going on a blitz, which includes 2 campaign stops and 1 interview and a meeting with elected leaders, both Republicans and Congress. And that, when I read blitz, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what everybody's been waiting for. It seems a little bit late. He should have been out there doing this. I mean, I was saying yesterday or the day before, something like, do a 2-hour press conference. The other version of that is do a bunch of live events and get out there. And it's coming a week later. And the blitz turns out to be what seems like just a normal schedule, but including 1 interview.
Well, and his schedule has been abnormal this entire time, in the sense that he does do campaign stops with speeches, but he's not doing a high volume of extemporaneous interviews that would make sense for a candidate that's down to a convicted felon in the polls and has been for months, whether it be swing states or nationally. And then, so Raskin and Doggett, they're both in safe blue districts. And then that also ties in with reporting that we're seeing that a draft letter is circulating as we speak between safe blue Democrats who are drafting it to ask Biden to resign. So the frontline Democrats are obviously concerned, but I think probably this is meant to demonstrate the fact that this is more than the Democrats on the ballot whose butts are, feeling a little hot right now, with the polling going in that direction. So this, when Raskin talks about a process that's happening very swiftly, I think we can understand what that means. Yeah, look, I
just want to add too, one other thing is that Biden was scheduled to campaign in Wisconsin, and Tammy Baldwin doing okay in the polls to the extent that we know, but obviously still feeling like she's one of the Democrats who's anticipated facing a tough race. She has apparently decided not to campaign with Joe Biden. Canceled and, we played that ad yesterday. This is when they start to feel that Biden is a liability. And there's a lot of different things, I think, behind this push. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And also what is being reported by the New York Times, though also being denied by Biden spokespeople. But just a word from our sponsor. Going online without ExpressVPN is like leaving your keys in your car while you run into the gas station. Most of the time, you're probably fine. But what happens if you come back and see that someone has driven off your car? I don't understand how people do that. I see it all the time, but I don't know how people leave their car running.
That's crazy.
I want to thank ExpressVPN for supporting the Majority Report. And here's the deal. Visit expressvpn.com/majority. You can get an extra 3 months free. And so what happens is every time you connect to an unencrypted network, doesn't matter if it's like in a cafe or in a hotel or coffee shop or airport or, big box store, your online data is not secure. Any hacker on the same network can gain access and steal your personal data. That means passwords, possibly bank logins, credit card details, whatever you got on there. Doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack somebody. Just some cheap hardware is needed. Literally a middle school kid, I mean a studious one, could do it. Your data is valuable. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person by selling personal info on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops hackers from stealing your data by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. I basically, it's just as a matter of course, am always hitting, making sure I'm putting my my VPN on. It takes one click. Most of the time I'm on my phone. I have it on my router as well. One click. And so when I'm out and about, if I ever need to use an internet, like when I'm in a box store or something like that, I got to ask, or the supermarket I shop in doesn't have great reception. I use the internet there, and one click with ExpressVPN, you know that you're safe. And again, it's one of those situations like where, for the most part, of course, there's no one trying to steal your stuff, but it's going to be that one time. Is it 1 out of 25, 1 out of 50 times, 1 out of 100 times? It's hard to know, but you can feel secure by securing your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/majority today. That's expressvpn.com/majority. You can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/majority. Okay, so we were teasing this before. You want to do the honors, Emma, with the New York Times? I mean, this makes sense, but it comes amid the reports that in I don't know if you noticed this, but on every interview that we've played, whether it was like Raskin or Doggett or Nancy Pelosi, they've been asked, have you spoken to the president since the debate? And the answer has been no.
Yes, J.B. Pritzker said the same thing last night on CNN, and Caitlin Collins pressed him for maybe 10 minutes straight about trying to get him to say Biden should drop out. But basically, he was, because there was also a call with the Democratic governors, and they have not heard from Biden either. Or he said, I've spoken to the campaign, but not Biden himself. And as we speak, I think I saw someone reported the White House schedule, 12:30 lunch between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. There were reports that he hadn't even really spoken to her either.
There's also a new job posting for Kamala Harris, social media, to amplify her voice in the coming months. So
can I do that on the side, Sam?
Emma's been auditioning all morning.
Just repeated posts of mama la, mama la, mama la.
The coconut emoji.
Mama la,
but it's interesting because the other part of that reporting is that he's not been talking to congressional leaders, which is odd at this time. Particularly, it's not like people didn't know on Friday after the debate that people were freaking out. So the normal course of events would be for the president to get on the phone with some key people and say, hey, look, I had a bad night. I get it. I took some, I accidentally reached for the Ambien when I was trying to reach for, the Zyrtec or whatever it is. And that's what happened. But instead, it seems like they have distanced themselves from congressional leaders, other electeds, and have only been in basically getting advice from Jill Biden, Hunter Biden, apparently his granddaughters. And like this is like insular type of stuff. It's
like Trump.
It's a little bit Trumpy, and it's not what you would expect for them to mount an effort. I mean, the obvious thing is you get your candidate out there and get them out there, and the obvious reason as to why that hasn't happened, because it's not like it would be weird for a presidential candidate to be all over the place in the midst of a presidential campaign. The obvious answer is that they just don't feel confident in sending Biden out there. And then, Emma, this is from the New York Times.
So Biden told ally he is weighing whether to continue in the race, the Times reported. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the White House was upset about this report, said that the Times did not give them enough time to comment, and refuted it. However, this does not seem far-fetched. You want to scroll down a little here, Bradley? President Biden has told a key ally that he knows he may not be able to salvage his candidacy if he cannot convince the public in the coming days that he is up for the job after a disastrous debate performance last week. The president, who the ally emphasized is still deeply in the fight for re-election, understands that his few appearances heading into the holiday weekend, including an interview scheduled for Friday with George Stephanopoulos of ABC News, and campaign stops in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin must go well. He knows if he has 2 more events like that, we're in a different place by the end of the weekend, said the ally, referring to Mr. Biden's halting and unfocused performance in the debate. The person spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive situation. Andrew Bates, a White House spokesman, said the claim was, quote, absolutely false, and that the White House had not been given enough time to respond, as I alluded to there.
I like how it's, if he has 2 more events like that,
then he'll know. Like, what is it? It just hasn't set in yet.
But here's the thing. The debate performance is not what needs to be recovered from at this point. It is the compounding effects of every freak out and everyone having eyeballs. 100%. The most apolitical people I know are focused on this right now. And I've heard things from like, this is why I don't care about politics, to this is why the Democrats are no different than the Republicans because they were lying this whole time about him. It presents a massive problem in that way. And that's why I said a few days ago that it's a huge benefit to the Democrats to be the party that listens to discontent and makes a change, because these are even, 2 deeply unpopular candidates. It makes Hillary Clinton versus Trump look like prime Obama versus Reagan in that sense. I mean, we're at this point where everybody is deeply discontent about the candidates. So it's an advantage for Democrats to change course in that regard. But that's the problem for Biden. It's not the debate performance. It's not about recovering. It's about the fact that there has now been a nearly week-long news cycle in which the entirety of the media is saying the same thing that the campaign keeps trying to get people to ignore and gaslight about, which is that Biden has suffered serious decline. I saw a side-by-side. It's not worth it to play because it was like a Russell Brand video or something. And I know that these are like Republican operative efforts. But the side-by-side of Biden in the primary debates versus the one versus Trump, it's night and day, and that was only 4 years ago.
And the line that they need to get to was in there, which is that Biden still thinks he can do it, but he recognizes that he's lost the confidence of the American people, and that's actually rather important in a campaign, and so he's going to step aside for that reason.
And I mean, I think that's setting up, defeat with dignity, I guess, or whatever it is, retreat with dignity. I mean, I think that it also just feels like what they're attempting to do to push back is insufficient. And it almost feels like, because it's not going to be enough for him to give a speech at a campaign rally. It's not going to be enough for a pre-recorded, edited interview to do it. Those are moments that could hurt him, theoretically, but they're not moments that could help him enough. I mean, he really needs to be able to show that he can speak extemporaneously. And they don't seem to be putting him into that type of situation.
And also, I mean, he needs to be able to change a narrative that is now united in he needs to be replaced. Or when there are open conversations about the replacement of the incumbent president, that's a bigger blow to the strength that he's trying to portray as an incumbent than the performance even in and of itself. The fact that
it reminds me of old Ann Landers or Dear Abby column. Somebody wrote in, Dear Abby, how can I tell if my relationship is in trouble? And she said, when you're asking that question.
Exactly. Right. When you're writing in to me. So, imagine just for a second a strategy of chiding people into not believing their lying eyes for the next 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think it seems to be untenable, and the real question is like, how permeable is that inner circle that Biden has done? I think as more and more people come out, I mean, it feels like it's pretty permeable at one point, and I would be surprised if this happened any quicker than it's happening at this point. I mean, this has been pretty dramatic, and I suspect they're waiting for another poll to come out. Accordingly, according to reporting, there's going to be, or there has been, an all-staff meeting at the White House today to calm everybody. There was a memo sent out. That all-staff meeting, I've been in these pizza parties. Always beware when the boss brings pizza to a party. It's not a good sign. But when there's pizza, everybody's in the room. That is a problem. But they are apparently, according to this Politico piece, nervous about a forthcoming New York Times poll that's going to show more significant deterioration. There's been a bunch of polls. Some have not been as bad as others. None of them have been sort of devastating. But remember, this is a very tight race, and he was already down. So dropping more from that point is exactly the opposite of what you want, particularly after the first debate. We have been talking about this debate for a couple of months since it's been set, essentially. And the theory was get Donald Trump out in the public, and this is going to begin his deterioration of support. And the exact opposite has happened. And
I don't know how the polls are not devastating, though, that we read yesterday, the leaked ones that were internal in the Democratic Party you got
to wonder who is leaking Democratic polls in this instance. But
the CNN ones weren't leaked, and that showed Biden being down by 10 points against Trump with independents and Harris leading Trump by 3 points with independents. Yeah, that was the CNN post-debate polling.
Without a doubt. The next question is who will replace Biden? And I really think this is, listen, I don't know who would be my favorite candidate to replace Biden in a fantasy world, but I haven't had the time to engage in fantasy. The only person who really can do this, in terms of because we're 4 months out. We are 4 months out from an election, right? This is we're in July. The election's in November.
Parliamentary systems do it. They have shorter elections. It's Jacinda Ardern,
but they don't have the kind of money that we're talking about. And so you've got $92 million in the bank in the Biden campaign. There is only one person who is eligible to get that money on day one, and that is Kamala Harris. There is nobody else who is eligible under federal election laws to get that money. The money can go through different various super PACs and whatnot to support another candidate, but that super PACs, they do not get the discounted TV rates. There is only one potential candidate right now who has an apparatus that pre-exists today, and that is Kamala Harris. She was part of that ticket. There's only one person who's really been on the ballot to some extent in all of these primaries. That's Kamala Harris. If you wait until August to do some type of open convention, aside from all of the other sort of ridiculousness around it, you are giving that candidate only 3 months to campaign.
Let me read this quote from Summer Lee, who is the first member, I believe, of the squad or squad adjacent to weigh in on this, which is, by the way, smart, because if AOC or Ilhan Omar is saying, let's replace Biden, that makes it look ideological and probably scares some of the centrist Biden people away. But Summer Lee had this quote about Kamala Harris. She said, maybe folks don't want to hear, but we have timing that is running out. Time is not on our side. We have a few months to do a monumental task. It's not cheap and it's not easy. If our president decides this is not a pathway forward for him, we have to move very quickly. There's not going to be time for a primary. That time is past. The vice president is the obvious choice. She's sitting right there. She's already been in the White House and has the name recognition and has been on the trail, and the optics of pushing aside a black woman, it's not good. She said that on the radio this morning. So I agree with that sentiment. In an ideal world, as you're saying, Sam, would I prefer a different candidate? All joking about being in the K-Hive now aside, of course. I think Kamala Harris has issues as a stump speech communicator. I don't necessarily think she's the strongest person ideologically. I think she's a bit of a sieve and somebody who will go with where the Democratic Party is going. But there could be worse options. There could be worse options than a narrative that's crafted about electing the first female president in a year where abortion is on the ballot. Yep. There could be worse options than somebody who did co-sponsor Medicare for All when she got into the Senate. She walked away from it in the campaign, but at least she wasn't taking the Biden approach at the time. There could be worse people than who have had the experience of systemic racism, and she talked about busing. There could be worse people. And I know that there's a lot of dismissiveness towards her, but it's also about the negative partisanship versus Trump. And she can articulate issues, she can speak to the abortion topic, and she can be at least somebody who can campaign.
It'll drive Trump crazy too.
And let's be clear, it's not like there's huge expectations for her as a candidate. There's just not. I mean, she's not. It's not like there's surprise things that are going to come out. I mean, she really has, I think, more upside than downside. There's a couple of questions on the IMs. If Biden were to end his campaign, would he remain president throughout the year? I personally, I think it's very important that Biden stay in office, because if he steps down and Harris becomes president, while she has, I guess, some sense of incumbency, that means that there's no vice president. That there's a process that needs to happen in terms of vice president, is my understanding. And then you would have Mike Johnson, literally the next person in line of succession. And I don't think that's a healthy scenario. Stranger things have happened.
And I think there's things on Biden's sort of desk that she might want the lame duck to deal with, rather than her getting 100%. Right into office and being responsible for all of it.
And it seems perfectly fine that you can say something to the effect of, I don't have the stamina to both campaign and be president. I want to dedicate myself to the presidency, get us out of this inflation. We're wrapping it up, whatever it is. That's the nature of the story. Somebody else asked if Kamala stepped aside, is there some type of succession for the campaign apparatus and for the money? Certainly not for the money under federal election law. Right. Her name is on the essentially the forms. So she can get that money. Nobody else can, at least not in a direct way.
So when she ran in 2019, 2020, she said that she'd eliminate the filibuster to pass the Green New Deal. That was one thing that she did say. She also has been leaking to the press during Biden's support for the genocide in Gaza that she wanted a more sympathetic approach towards Palestinians, which I think was strategic on her part. I'm giving a rosy picture, but just take yourself back to 2020, and we all know who the two best candidates in that primary were, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, in that order. Who was the third person you would have preferred in that situation? Mayor Pete? Kamala? Right? I don't know. I mean, she's not the worst one that was running.
I would have been worried she would have lost, but yeah. I mean, at this point, I think she's a better candidate than Biden is, so...
In terms of ideology,
I think from my perspective, that's what it really comes down to, is that I don't know that Harris's stock has risen in my mind as much as Biden's ability to do this has dropped. And I think it's a different electorate on some level that Biden's going for, but I suspect that Harris's strength with unions may be stronger than we think it is. She spent a lot of time sort of in the background dealing with this union stuff. It's one of those situations where it doesn't seem like there's a lot of options either way. I mean,
no, I agree.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to she's been relatively low profile, and look, she was a cop. The marijuana convictions, horrible, and there's a lot there, but she's basically just a standard Democrat.
Yeah,
she's basically just a standard Democrat, and I think you can, as I said earlier, the way to talk about abortion makes much more sense when she's out there. And
well, that's the thing, is Trump will have to return serve finally.
Yep.
And I mean, there's just benefit of him having to talk with somebody who can actually be fluent on a topic like abortion.
It's also going to be interesting to see how he deals with her being a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
There was a theory, and I think certainly, understandable on some level in the wake of Trump in 2020, that you want the most sort of like bland type of person for Trump to run against, so that he could not inspire the anti-immigrant, the misogynist, the racist element of his support. And that worked in the context of Biden. It might be also interesting. I mean, certainly he was able to exercise a certain amount of, or draw on a certain type of misogyny when it came to Hillary Clinton. I mean, no doubt. But people have to remember, there was a part of the reason why I felt that she was not as a candidate, right? Never mind in terms of like what her CV said, but as a candidate, she was uniquely ill-suited to go against Donald Trump, was because there was literally a 40 or 30-year cottage industry of demonizing her, taking her to a different level. The misogyny was so intertwined with people's perspective of Clinton. And frankly, I just don't know that you have the ability to develop those narratives around Harris in the same way, because he only had 4 months. I mean, this is like one advantage any Democratic comes in, is that you don't have the same amount of time to develop the negatives that you otherwise would. And
especially if you're a weak campaigner, the 4 months is actually kind of a heaven sent.
And increased attention on it. Yeah.
Well, if there's a theory that a generic Democrat can win, you got 4 months, and they're all pretty generic Democrat at this point for most of the population.
Well, so to bolster your point, I think the misogyny about Hillary Clinton, it's all about, do you have wiggle room to create your own narrative about somebody? Hillary Clinton, as you say, after 30 years of Fox News, saying she killed Seth Rich or whatever the case, or that she stood by her man
Vin Foster,
when there was this embarrassing
Whitewater,
this embarrassing sex
Clinton
scandal
Cash.
too, which also increased internalized misogyny with a lot of suburban white women. I just want to point that out there. There was everyone already had their opinion on Hillary Clinton by the time she entered the race. I saw numbers on CNN last night. Something like 7 or 8% of voters polled had no opinion of Trump or Biden. They were similar in terms of no opinion had. The number for Kamala Harris was 22%. And when we're talking about the negative partisanship and the way that people feel about things like January 6th, how that polls with independent voters, how abortion polls with independent voters, the point is that it's an opportunity, and it doesn't have the baggage that you describe about Hillary Clinton, because some of the dismissive of Kamala Harris out of hand, I feel like I don't love the undertones, even though, again, I think like from a leftist perspective, she's a flawed candidate, but we're talking about how can we defeat Trump in the fall. It's really this reflexive, like, oh, she's going to bring out the misogynists and the racists. Well, that's an argument for like never running a woman or never running a person of color, because right now Trump's as weak as possible. And so do I think she's the strongest candidate? Not necessarily. But do I think this is one of the best environments for a generic Democrat to win a presidential election in theory? Yeah.
And look, I mean, the reality is, and I've alluded to this in the past, if Biden or Democrat, whomever runs, garners even close to the same percentage spreads that they did in 2020. So in other words, like the cohort that Biden leaned on, the younger cohort, has grown exponentially just because of the nature of where we are in terms of the size of the generations. And the one that Trump was most successful in has shrunken. And I would also argue that that difference in cohorts has also been a diminishment in the number of voting racists and misogynists. I mean, I think, like, progress moves slowly. And certainly the more younger people we have who are make up a larger part of the voting electorate, the less that electorate becomes racist or misogynist. That doesn't mean that we don't have misogyny or racism in the country, and that in many respects it's systemic. But when it comes to elections, it may have a little bit less salience than it did in 2020. And again, we're talking this election, the popular vote may be a different story. But when it comes to the electoral vote, we could be talking about 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 votes, maybe tops, difference between someone who wins the presidency and doesn't over the Electoral College. So it's a bizarre, we're in a bizarre world. We'll take some phone calls in a moment. I just want to draw people's attention. Emma, you've spoken at least to one person who's a signer of this letter.
Nell Sheline, who we'd had on the show before she joined the administration in a fellowship to talk about her work on Yemen, and she's been one of the more vocal members of the Biden administration. She worked in the State Department, who resigned over the genocide in Gaza.
There is another Biden administration appointee that quit. Do we have the letter? Can we put the letter up?
Here it is. Yeah. I can read this, Sam.
I can too. We're former U.S. government officials who resigned from our respective positions over the last 9 months due to our grave concerns with current U.S. policy toward the crisis in Gaza, and U.S. policies and practices towards Palestine and Israel more broadly. We are subject matter experts representing the interagency. We are a multi-faith, multi-ethnic community of professionals and patriots dedicated to the service of the United States of America, its people, and its values. Whether in civil service, foreign service, armed service, or political appointees, each of us has sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. Alone, we each made the somber and difficult decision to resign based on the individual circumstances we encountered at different times during these past 9 months as we performed our specific jobs. But today we stand united. The administration's policy in Gaza is a failure and a threat to U.S. national security. America's diplomatic cover for and continuous flow of arms to Israel has ensured our undeniable complicity in the killings and forced starvation of a besieged Palestinian population in Gaza. That it's not only morally reprehensible and in clear violation of international humanitarian law and U.S. laws, but it has also put a target on America's back. Pretty powerful stuff. I don't remember 12 people resigning, frankly, during the Iraq War.
Right.
We just didn't see it in the same way, which is sort of shocking. We should have. But I think, again, this is a function. I think a lot of those people are younger. Not all of them.
Right.
But a lot of them are younger people. And I just think we're in just a different era where.
And I mean, I wonder how the calculus changes if Biden looks like he's just like a loser. If, for instance, he stays on, I mean, even the careerists are going to be like, should I take a chance to get off of this ship now and save some kind of face rather than going down with it and never having resigned from administration doing this?
Right. Right.
It's possible.
And I think the later in the letter, they basically demand that the official policy of the United States would support Palestinian self-determination in some way. I'm if I'm not mistaken, they do mention genocide as well in this letter, but maybe I'm wrong. So don't take my word on that. But I saw one of the signatories was basically saying that there's a possibility, if there's unconditional support for Netanyahu, that an expansion of a war into Lebanon could endanger American soldiers, say, if Donald Trump gets reelected. And I don't know, the Israeli government wants to pull the United States into a broader regional war there. If it's our ally in the Middle East and we're supplying these weapons, that very much could tumble us into an immensely deadly quagmire, let alone like what this does to the people of Lebanon. It seems like an afterthought, but it shouldn't be. Because Netanyahu wants to stay in power. And again, like as we begin to unroll the failures of Biden and his team to adequately deal with his seemingly kind of more rapid decline in the past 6 months, you have to wonder how much Biden's weakness or inability to kind of see the moment clearly allows him to say, you know, like, hey, Rafah's our red line. And then they cross it and that's not really our red line. The inconsistencies could make sense if there's a leadership vacuum at the very top with Biden as well. Just a theory.
It's possible. I mean, the best that I think we can hope for is that in the event we do get another candidate, Harris is as likely, it seems to me, as any of them to at least apply some pressure on the brakes. And certainly if I mean, I got to imagine Bibi Netanyahu also a little nervous right now because I think there was definitely confidence that they probably had in terms of Biden's weakness. And certainly Netanyahu thought like, well, I'm either going to get Biden, who seems to be doing whatever I ask and is willing to take whatever we do in terms of not listening to Biden, to the extent any of that was sincere, or he gets Trump, who he knows is basically going to do what Miriam Adelson wants him to do and allow for annexation of the West Bank. Incidentally, I mentioned this as a headline. I cannot find the piece in front of me for whatever reason now. But Israel is planning to essentially steal the largest amount of land. They call it appropriate. The largest amount of land that they have since the Oslo Accords in the West Bank. You know, many times we've been told that Smotrich, the finance minister, is just, you know, he's just one politician in Israel as an excuse for his full-on fascist quotes and sayings. I mean, recently he was like, I don't care about the treatment of Palestinians. We should just kill them all, essentially. He is not only a settler himself, he is also the finance minister and is basically the prefect for the West Bank.
Yeah.
He has been hobbling the Palestinian Authority's ability to get any financing. I think he just relinquished it, but I think part of the deal was we get more, we steal more land from Palestinians. I mean, there's no other way to characterize it. You can say appropriate, but that's not, when you appropriate other people's land and have no legal authority to do so, all of those settlements are illegal under any semblance of law.
And it's been this way since 1967, by the way. I just want to say, like, these settlements have been a way systematically to ensure that there is no two-state solution, which, again, is a liberal mythology in that way, because the process of settling into the Palestinian land as designated by international law means Israel's just expanding slowly, and then they're ramping it up now in this time of, like, fascist death spiral. And we covered this 2 weeks ago, that quietly the IDF had transferred power in the occupied West Bank to settlers, basically roving gangs with guns, who were working under Smotrich. So it's the IDF essentially giving carte blanche to far-right terrorists and extremists who are led by Smotrich to oversee the expansion of these settlements at a rapid pace.
And I mean, this is that sort of two-step between, is this going to be administered by, say, the IDF military forces or, say, fascist civic leaders? That's the apartheid thing, right? Like, if the West Bank is not controlled by the IDF, if it's controlled by Israeli politicians, then that means that the people that are controlled and that should be counted towards the demographic that should be given, say, voting rights, for instance. But of course, they're not going to be. So that's why a lot of these groups have been saying, we're going to count those as part of Israel, just like you all do, and call this apartheid.
Well, you just call it Greater Israel. And I think that's just more accurate, because Israel controls the West Bank, or as you should call it, has a prefect over it. It's an occupation in the West Bank. And then in Gaza, yeah, they pulled out the settlers early in the 2000s, but they still imposed a blockade. They still control every movement. They control their water, their electricity. In no other scenario that wasn't heavily propagandized, we would understand that this is a part of the controlled territory of that country, that this is all Greater Israel. You can include, East Jerusalem as well. But that's not how it's spoken about. We're talking about how Hamas is some sovereign entity or something like that. No, that's the reality. And that's why we talk about a one-state democratic solution being the most equitable and the most realistic.
My plan was to take phone calls in the first hour, and it didn't work out.
We all believed in you.
Folks, just a heads up for next week. Tomorrow, there are elections in Britain. They do this just to spite us, to somehow, because they felt bad. It's July 4th, of course. The British are still smarting from our independence, which is probably looking like more and more of a gift as each year passes.
Oh, I don't know about that. They got their own mess over there. I honestly think it makes me feel patriotic every time I look at it.
They're almost in worse shape than we are. I think it's probably the case.
I mean, Jeremy Corbyn was kicked out of the party, and for all people who think we should not use the Democratic ballot line, well, he's fighting for his life as an independent right now. I hope he wins, but it just goes to show that it's not just as simple as easy as saying, I'm going to go independent.
Mm-hmm.
We will be covering that next week, either Tuesday or Wednesday. Also, on Sunday, elections in France, final runoff. And I think today was the last day in which you could drop from the ballot in terms of their assembly, essentially, their parliament. And the idea that there were... essentially, the left party had announced that if they were in a race, a three-way race, they would drop out to essentially empower Macron centrists. It is unclear to me whether Macron's party has done the same, but I guess we'll have a better sense of that. Next week, we will be talking to someone about those elections. Also, next week, we will update you if you haven't heard. If something happens like Biden decides to drop out of the campaign and you haven't heard about that as of next Monday, we will let you know about that as well. We got a a great interview with Rick Shapiro, with Rick Perlstein on Friday, and a new interview. And also, just because this slew of Supreme Court rulings were so horrible, and also, look at the federal judiciary that has completely attacked, like even the last round of less robust, more grounded, let's say, student debt relief in a pre-existing program was essentially enjoined by one of these Republican judges. We also know that Biden's, I would say, perhaps most important climate initiative in pausing the LNG export facility building permits, really in an attempt to scuttle them, has been reversed by a Trump-appointed judge. And it's unclear what's going to happen with that. But these are all very important things. We'll do a slew. Matt Stoller had a thread of cases already that are being impacted by the Chevron doctrine cases. And so because of that, we decided to put the entire, and not just the clip that exists out there of the debate that was really centered around this, that I had with Jimmy Dore in 2016. It was a completely impromptu debate, and you'll see that from the clip that we've done. It's a much longer clip that we're putting onto the show. I was talking about, I actually played the clips from his show, and then he calls in the middle of me doing this bit.
A lot of people may not even know who Jimmy Dore is at this point, Sam. Do you have like a one-sentence summary?
He was just a former, well, this is when he was at the Young Turks, frankly, at that time. And he ultimately was leaving. I got into that was basically where I began to look at him with a very jaundiced eye. I remember at one point I had run into Cenk at that tort conference, and Cenk Uygur asked me, like, what can we do to smooth over this thing with Jimmy and you? And I was like, oh, that's easy. Fire him.
Oh,
fire him now.
Brain transplant.
And Cenk did not listen to me. I think ultimately probably regretted that. I don't know. But be that as it may, Jimmy Dore is ostensibly on the left. And really, I don't, his politics, as far as I can tell, are all over the place. He platforms people like Candace Owens and others. But what was really problematic for me at the time was he was just injecting a mass amount of stupidity into his audience. And that was an audience at that time that we shared. Yeah. I think much of his audience has become anti-vax and much more reactionary in many respects.
We talk about the misogyny that Hillary Clinton faced. I think there was some people who were, had huge problems with her as a candidate, but there were people who found a home in a commentary about Hillary Clinton with Jimmy that didn't feel productive. I'll just say that. And my former colleague Anna Kasparian accused him of sexual, for some pretty extreme sexual harassment comments. And I'll just say that based on vibes, that tracks for me.
The worst part was that he was both promoting the Seth Rich conspiracy, and B, convincing people that Hillary Clinton had Parkinson's. And I was like, there's just a dumb, it was clear where he was headed with this. He was chasing, clicks at any given time, or he was just, had some brain chemistry problems.
I would hasten to add that he was simulating the being to the left in the most radical approach, because two of his prescriptions from that debate is we let Hillary lose, so then we can get a really radical Democrat like Elizabeth Warren. I wonder if he would still stand on that. And also his prescription to the Supreme Court was, well, if they try to do anything really bad, the Democrats will stop them from doing it. And it's just like, you believe in the Democrats actually too much with both of those.
That's exactly. But we are going to attach that to the show, and then maybe we'll put out a new clip of it, because I do think it is important. At the time, I never looked at it, but I realized, like, oh wait, we didn't even do the run up to the debate, because I was actually playing clips from his show, and I had told him that I'm going to do that, and he told me he didn't want to come on, but then apparently he was monitoring the show. Thin skin.
It's funny how that happens every once in a while.
You kind of know this. Even people do that, like, to this day, and just take some cues from the show. Maybe it's just because we stream earlier than some other shows, and we can help people out. But
it's a tell. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you help this show survive and thrive. And you can IM the show via our app, majorityapp.com. All sorts of member benefits. Emma, and don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, fair trade coffee and hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. You can get the Majority Report blend. Emma.
On ESPN yesterday, we spoke about NBA and NHL free agency, a bit about the draft as well, in both leagues, but also the fact that the NHL decided to drop some extremely offensive and messed up news as soon as free agency kicked off, and that they are reinstating the three Blackhawks, both the two executives and the head coach who helped cover up the sexual assault that was happening in the organization, as to not disrupt their Stanley Cup run. And the this league, which pretends it wants to expand, operates like a college fraternity. So youtube.com/ESPN show.
Matt.
Last night on Left Reckoning, record-breaking episode, because Emma Vigland joined us once again. We got 23,000 of you have already tuned in, so
really,
maybe 23,000 more. Check that out. We talk about our boy Joe Biden and how great he's doing, including a surprise, well, not really endorsement, but a lack of endorsement for Donald Trump that might have Joe Biden winning Tennessee. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
It's a joke.
The Haktua girl will not spit on Trump's thing, so...
Sam, does that mean anything to you?
So. What's that?
Do you want this explained?
Does the Haktua girl mean anything to you or no?
No.
Okay, that's probably good.
It's quite all right.
646-257-3920. We're going to put on the phones right away, ladies and gentlemen. 646-257-3920 is the number. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no. Are you ready?
Who sent us
this? Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
And back.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Let's take a quick phone call, and then we'll get into this sort of the fallout from the Supreme Court stuff. I mean, we're going to be feeling the fallout of the Supreme Court decisions over the past week for probably decades.
Yep.
So, calling from a 954 area code. We'll have an opportunity to talk about it more. Calling from a 954 area code. Who's this, and where are you calling from?
Yo, is this me?
Yep.
Oh, wow. First time caller. I watch you guys almost every day, but probably have to stop that because my blood pressure is going way too far up.
Well, that's why we promote the sunsetlakesebede.com because it's now become a necessity.
Right. I'm a 27-year-old from Florida. You can call me Joe. And I got to say, you guys are driving me nuts with the replace Biden stuff. It's terrifying because it's such a bad gamble. The Democrat, especially since all the higher level Democrats are behind it, I'm like, oh, that's when you know it's a bad idea. You know, it's like they haven't come up with a good idea in the last decade. But to think that the racists who were upset that Obama was the president for 8 years, so they came out and then we tried to pull Hillary. So they came out and they made sure she didn't get president, wouldn't come out and completely destroy any chances of hope is, to me, it's asinine. I'm not upset that people are saying it, but we're all carrying water for this narrative.
Point me to an election where Obama lost, though, caller, Joe.
No. I'm saying afterwards, though. Afterwards, the racists lost their minds, and they've still lost their minds. After Obama, it was the end of normalcy. After that, I'm not saying it's because of Obama. I'm just saying they just won't.
I agree with you, frankly, in terms of your assessment of what happened after Obama. There is no doubt in my mind, and my theory at the time was like a lot of these people were like, there were two dynamics. One is they're like, we just had a non-normal president. We're not having another one 2 in a row. We need to go back to a normal president. And Donald Trump is particularly good at essentially beating the bushes and bringing those people out. Here's why I think and you may be right. It's definitely one of my biggest concerns about Harris as a candidate. That is, obviously not a function of anything that she can do about that. But here is why I don't have the same concern that I would have even in 2020. And that's because it's a significantly different electorate from 2016, just in terms of age cohort. It's a very different electorate. And
can I say something then?
Let me just finish.
Can I say something?
That's one thing. I think on a numerical basis in this country, I think there is just a fewer. Is it 1 million fewer? Is it 500,000 fewer? Is it 200,000 fewer? 100,000 fewer? There are fewer misogynists and racists in this country. I don't know what the number is, but there are. Just in terms of, if you look at age, and we can know what different age cohorts feel about, race and gender, et cetera. That's A. And B, in 2020, we had record turnout for both Democrats and Republicans. The idea that we're going to beat that turnout this year, I find hard to believe. I find it hard to believe that that's going to happen this time around. Now, it's possible, but if what you're saying, that Trump is going to have the ability to mobilize a new group of people who wouldn't have otherwise voted for him in 2020 because Kamala Harris is black and a woman, I find it hard to believe. I do think there are people who are going to be like, who would have voted for Biden, who are going to be like, I'm not voting for her. But I think they're going to be offset by people who might be more interested in voting because she was not president when we were as supportive of the genocide in Gaza, or she's just younger, and younger people are like, she may be more in touch with what we're doing. I mean, that's the theory, anyways. But what's your argument against what I've just said?
Okay. Well, your point B, I agree. I don't think Trump's going to be able to squeeze more out of that Republican rock. I don't think, I honestly, in where I'm from, the deep blue area, Republicans always turn out. Like, that's a known thing. Like, they will always be there. They will always, always, always be voting. This isn't going to convince any more Republicans to go out and vote against them. This is going to convince those independents who don't really care, but they're going to vote, to be like, I'm not voting for a woman.
Based on what? Based on what? Based on what?
No, hold on. I've worked with them. I've worked with people who, at a regular Target, unloading trucks, menial, regular work, and men who are like, I like Bernie Sanders, he talks about good stuff, and this was back in 2016, and they were like, I ain't voting for a woman. Woman can't run the country.
Okay, so anecdotal. Anecdotal.
It is anecdotal, but that's what the ears on the ground are more like. My father, three men at my father's job. My mother just told me 3 men said, "Damn, sucks that we're gonna have women here now."
I'm not discounting this caller, but okay. So I understand. There's going to be some
blue area, and this hold on, and this is misogyny that would make them just be like, you know what? Nah.
Hold on 1 second. So those are anecdotes, and that's exactly what Sam is saying. Are there going to be some people that say I can't vote for a woman? Absolutely. Do you think that there's more opportunity for women and people of color to be mobilized, which is, by the way, the path to Biden's victory, to Obama's victories? And also, your anecdotes fly in the face of the data that we have so far, which is that Kamala Harris does better against Biden in the polls that have come out so far, and that among independents specifically, Kamala Harris has a 3-point lead against Trump and per CNN, and that Biden has a 10-point deficit against Trump with independents.
And I gotta say, let me just reiterate this, okay? That you're talking about, stories from 2016. They're not going to vote for a woman, and I agree with that. But the fact of the matter is that the number of people that those people you have in contact with represent is just simply on a raw basis lower than it was in 2016. And Hillary Clinton lost by 40,000 votes across 3 states. So I agree that there is a cohort of people that you've captured. But what I'm suggesting is that it's almost necessarily the case that that cohort in raw numbers is significantly less than it was in 2016. I mean, 8 years is a long time for young people to become voter eligible, and older people, particularly in the wake of COVID, and the people you were just talking about are also more likely to have passed away. We know this statistically in COVID.
Oh no, I'm sorry. These were young people. Like, these were people who were on the job, but these are just regular folks.
Well,
one of them was my direct boss, young guy.
Let's say they're all in their 30s or in their 20s. It doesn't matter, because I can tell you as a fact that the 20-year-olds of today are less likely to be misogynist than the 20-year-olds of yesterday. That's just a fact.
Can you answer what I said about the independent polling that flies in the face of?
The polling. I did want to address that. I have a degree in statistics, and I'm never that confident in polling. I've looked into the studies, how they're done, but I've never been super enthusiastic about their results. There is one guy that I am.
All right, but wait a second. Listen.
So you're into statistics, but you want to tell us how we're wrong based on anecdotes about people that you know. Like, that's a better mathematical equation.
Oh my goodness. No, that's not what I wanted to say. I guess I don't have.
You're gonna condescend to me. I'll condescend right back, buddy.
I wasn't condescending, but if you think I was, I apologize.
Look, listen, we've been on this for too long, but the bottom line is, I think it is a legitimate concern, but we're not in any position to say there's any data that, you discount polls. Okay.
There is one, a historian who guessed the last 9 out of 10 elections, and the only one he got wrong was Al Gore, but that was because that one was stolen. And he advised that they should not switch the Biden ticket after the debate. He's like, it would not be in their favor.
Well, I hope that guy's on somebody's payroll, because he's obviously the all-knowing. But I appreciate the call. I mean, that guy is still he is still a cohort of one. I think there's probably, when you have Harris as the nominee, there's probably a little more pressure on the import of who's going to be her vice presidential pick. And I'd be surprised if it wasn't somebody that they felt, if it wasn't a Biden type of person. I don't know who that person is off the top of my head. We've mentioned, maybe it's a Jay Inslee, I've heard, or Cooper in North Carolina, or we're talking about Bashir in Kentucky. I mean, somebody who has, who can, maybe project enough manliness that the people that that guy worked with on his job would be willing to go in and vote. I would also, I wonder, what the statistically likelihood of a lot of those people on that job also voting are. I mean, it's a risk, but right now it is clear that there's a lot of people whose own sort of like political fortunes are on the line, and they're worried about Biden as well.
I have to circle back to this, I think, very reductive narrative that everything since Obama has been because people went crazy about race in this country. Like, Obama won 2 terms. He's a black guy. I don't quite understand. Like, Hillary lost because she was already, first of all, she lost to Obama in 2008 because she was the pro-war, centrist. That's probably why she lost in 2016 too.
I think misogyny, to be honest with you, is a more actionable force in voting than race. I just think that there are more people who are more comfortable in this country acting and articulating misogyny than they are race.
But I think that's fair enough. Yeah, I think that at least on
I
electoral
don't
level,
know how Harris's race impacts that, though. I'm not sure it doesn't cut against it, because then, I think there was a lot of people who wanted to prove that they weren't racist by voting for Barack Obama, and then, I think Trump was able to capitalize on that. There was, we had that data point from, I can't remember his name now. I've cited this many times. 50% of non-college educated white people in this country thought the Republican Party was to the left of the Democratic Party on race as of 2008.
Yeah. But that's the idea. What's the ideas in their head? But I also would underline they're the non-college educated whites, and we went through a financial crisis that Hillary Clinton wasn't speaking to at all. So maybe that got translated into racism. But I think we should just look a little bit more at the fundamentals than just say people went crazy about identity issues because the black guy was president for 8 years. He would have been president for 8 more too, frankly.
He'd be winning in Reagan numbers against. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but the reason I just get frustrated by this reflexive knee-jerk thing is that I feel sometimes it's just that people automatically think a woman can't win because in their mind they can't really imagine a woman in a position of authority, and so then they say, oh, the rest of the country's going to have this backlash, but it's really their preconceived idea about things. Jamel Bowie was alluding to this when he was on with us on Friday. I think there's something to that. But when we're constantly talking about the threat of it, and there's not really any data that we're looking at the current moment that backs up that assertion, the independence numbers are the best we have from CNN right now, and it goes contrary to what people are saying, I sometimes have to wonder what the impulse is there. Because it's never been done before, but that doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah.
And the misogyny about Hillary Clinton, as I said, it's hard to overstate. People talk about how white women went for Trump in 2016. There's a lot of internalized misogyny in this country. I mean, I talk to any woman who's older, maybe right-leaning, and mention Dr. Jill Biden and see the reaction that you get from them. And people in the Democratic Party, there's, I don't know. The point here is just that I guess I'm working against my point with that. But I do think that Hillary Clinton was so uniquely in the public eye, specifically as it related to her husband, and then the scandal and the judgment and what happened with Monica Lewinsky created a lot of women in this country had preconceived judgments about her for things outside of even her politics that had been built up for 30 years, in addition to oh, she's so corrupt, she's so out of touch, all of those things, that created a misogynistic stew that Kamala Harris is not going to have to necessarily deal with.
I mean, this is also just a question of just, of generation. I mean, Hillary Clinton is from a completely different generation than Kamala Harris. In 1993 or 92, when she runs, when Bill Clinton ran for office, one of the big interviews about her was I'm not just a Tammy. She said, I think the quote was something to the effect of I'm not, Tammy Wynette. I'm not just stand by your man. I'm not going to be spending my time baking cookies in the kitchen. And that was for women of her age in that era. That was cutting edge. This is a time that same year, I think it was, or the year before, Dan Quayle had said that Murphy Brown, played by Candice Bergen on a network television show, was sending a horrific message to the public by having a child on her own. Can you imagine a politician saying that today?
Right.
It would be bizarre. But
But
that's
even
where
Hillary's saying that today, I think. Like the
you wouldn't have to.
But even her phrasing of it is wrong. It's like an old way to view feminism where like it's about she embedded in her statement there is shaming homemakers versus like to empower herself,
career women, yeah.
which is
That's what I'm
exactly
saying. You wouldn't
those
even have to
same
say
women turned around and voted for Trump. Those same white suburban maybe homemakers turned around and voted for Trump because they didn't like the vibe she's putting out as like for other women. She doesn't. That woman doesn't represent me, right?
And that may be have been people are telling me that may have been in defense of like I think when they were having the sit down interview, you know, after reports of Bill Clinton, you know, philandering or having an affair. But regardless, the point being that this is not something that would even make sense for someone, for a woman who was 50 years old to say today. Like, I don't need to justify any of this. Like, of course, like, this is not, you know, I mean, we've come a long way in that respect. Now, I'm not saying that misogyny is gone. Again, I do think it's a very active thing, but understand, like, there was, like Emma was saying, decades of this stewing and out there, and people built off that in a way that they haven't had a chance to build that off of Kamala Harris. But, you know, we'll see.
We're not assessing it in a vacuum. It's is misogyny more relevant than Biden's senility?
Calling from a 318 area code. Who's this? Where are we calling from?
Hey, is this me?
Yep.
Hello? Let me walk outside and take you off my AirPods. Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Jake from Georgia.
Jake from Georgia. What's on your mind?
And I just had two comments. One is kind of just about the General Biden senility stuff. I was in a group chat recently, and it's just kind of frustrating to, like, see everyone calling for him to step down, like, after an optically bad debate and not, like, the horrific policy issues that have happened over the last few months and year.
You mean
which has just been interesting.
Well,
what?
Welcome to American politics.
Yeah. No, I know. It's just like, it's just been interesting, and trying to, like, with a group of people who I talk pretty frequently with, who are, you know, like to play the moderate, the Republican Party is like, it used to be fine, but now it's run by the crazies. It's just, you know, it's just kind of like a weird, surreal moment to be like, oh yeah, the optics is what's causing the problem now. But that's just a minor frustration. In a totally different direction, I was talking with the same group about, like, just kind of public option stuff. It was more like in the technological sector, about creating, like, public good AI, and, like, neither here nor there whether that could be good. But one of the pushbacks I got was this idea from one of the libertarians in this group that I'm in, saying that, like, the problem they see with it is, like, an opening for regulatory capture. And they sent me, like, a video of, like, oh, if you don't know what regulatory capture is, here's an example. And it was this speech, I can't remember what the guy who gave it was, but everything he described, like all the examples that were there, it was like the failing didn't seem to be that the regulation was bad. It was that, like, it wasn't being properly, like, managed or, like, actually enforced.
Yeah. No.
But the libertarian answer is like, oh, then that means we need no regulation at all.
Yes. I have had this conversation, this argument with, I can't remember his name. I used to go on Radigan every week with a columnist, not a bad guy, but a libertarian. And he would always preface, like, as a libertarian, and we would have this argument constantly. There is no doubt there is regulatory capture in our government. It is a real problem. And for folks don't know, it's like when industry essentially gets control of the regulatory apparatus, and regulation serves industry more than it should, or whatever the balance is. And the libertarian solution to this is less government, so that they don't have the ability to regulate as much, as opposed to disempower those who capture the regulatory agencies. I mean, it's like saying, I have come up with a cure for cancer, and that is to literally kill the patient. And if we kill the patient, the cancer dies. Like, I understand that, you may have a side effect of harming the patient to kill the cancer, but the agenda is not to kill the patient. And that is the argument they always make. But the counter argument to that is, why don't we disempower the corporations and the industries that are engaging in the regulatory capture? Because if they were disempowered through taxation, through broader regulations,
socializing the industry itself.
Socializing the industry is an answer. Not allowing them to lobby. You can't spend more than X amount of money lobbying the government. Okay. And now we'd have some freedom of speech problems from the Supreme Court, but we could work on that. But the point is that there's always going to be attempts for regulatory capture if the regulations are doing anything, and shrinking the government, also, I would point to local governments with these people, because if they think that regulatory capture is a problem on a federal level, wait till they see what's going on in their local governments. Appreciate the call.
Yeah. Well, and one more thing? Just within that was the idea of, like, with Chevron just now being overturned, like, I'm wondering how that'll affect the regulatory capture argument moving forward, because if they're trying to successfully, like, disempower regulation, and
they'll never end that.
Ability to kind
libertarianism is a religion. There is no end to that argument. It will go down. They'll ride that all the way to the end. Appreciate the call. All right, let's put this up. Apropos of our conversation, the Times Siena poll has dropped.
This was the one the Biden team was worried about trying to head off. It's bad.
Biden is now losing to Trump by 6 points with likely voters. How far off has that dropped? Do we know?
It's a 3-point swing from a week earlier.
Yeah,
we open the article.
It's
the largest lead Trump has recorded in the Times Siena poll since 2015. Mr. Trump leads by even more among registered voters, 49 to 41%. So likely voters, he leads by 6 points, 8 points with registered voters.
Yep.
I mean, you're already seeing centrist Democrats like Jared Golden and Mary Gluesenkamp-Perez saying, like, yeah, look, Biden's the candidate. Nothing's going to happen to get him off the ticket, but he's going to lose. And, we just have to be ready for that.
Golden was happy for it. He's like, I don't mind if Trump wins.
He's like, Golden, if you read that, I saw some people pointing it or like sharing it without realizing that Golden, when he says democracy, he means him and Joe Manchin conspiring to kill Build Back Better.
Can you scroll down a bit? This is more in this part. In the pre-debate poll, Mr. Trump had led among likely male voters by 12 percentage points. After the debate, he led among men. His lead among men ballooned to 23 points. That movement was particularly concentrated among younger men and men without college degrees.
Oh, those guys that won't vote for a woman?
Mr. Biden's 5-point edge amongst likely women voters before the debate actually ticked up slightly, 8 points. Interestingly. We know that everyone thinks that Biden lost. Right. I mean, the results of the debate are clear, but that polling is really bad. Really, really bad. And so, like, the reports are that Biden and Harris have told the staff that they're staying on together on the ticket. That could be just a way to make I mean, they're still going to wait to see, I think, for a little bit more time. I don't think that means too much. But
do they switch?
Just flip. I just think it'd be very easy for Biden to, I mean, if he, wanted to do the right thing and wasn't just preoccupied with his own sort of internal monologue, but just say, look, I mean, I've already said this, but I think I can run again, but it's clear that the voters can't. And so I'm going to do the right thing. But instead, just hang out with Hunter and Rehoboth.
I wonder if they could switch. It hadn't really occurred to me, but I was sitting here saying like, what she needs to do is basically get a Biden to her, like in the same way that Obama did to assure, those. I wonder.
It's not work. I mean, first of all, I don't know if Biden's ego would allow it. And secondly, I think we shouldn't underestimate how toxic Biden is at this point. I mean, Tammy Baldwin understands it. She doesn't even want to be seen with him campaigning.
She wouldn't have to. He would be staying.
I just mean for the ticket. What's the point?
I'm not sure.
Pritzker.
I'm not sure.
Get Bashir.
We're at the point where it's sort of like they're good. I don't know who it is that is having this conversation with Biden, but it's not just Biden's negotiating with people. Do you know what I mean? Like at one point when it's like he's going to step down, there's certain things that he's going to want. I would imagine, and one doesn't know what that is. And if he was to say like, "I'll do it," but I want to be able to guide her. And everybody's like, "Oh God, okay, whatever you say." I don't know. I mean, listen. This is not there. There's not a lot of historical precedent for anything that we're talking about. There's just simply not. And to the extent that it is, even I was barely sentient at that time when it still was a very different situation, frankly. Let's talk about the import of this election for a moment. Here is the Heritage Foundation president, Kevin Roberts, talking about, I guess, ostensibly on Real America's Voice in the wake of the Supreme Court's presidents can do illegal things, but just not be held accountable for it. Ruling by the Supreme Court. And here's Kevin Roberts. This is the guy who wrote the 2025 project, or Project 2025.
Project 2025, yeah.
Which is about, I mean, broad strokes. There's a lot of just sort of like normie Republican stuff in it, but there's also a lot of, we want to turn the government into an authoritarian infrastructure and destroy the administrative state. That's one of the major thrusts of the Project 2025. And here's the guy who wrote it and will be marshaling it through. This is also the same organization that handed Donald Trump a list of justices from which he chose his Supreme Court justices, and I imagine also subsidiary federal judgeships when he was in office.
Things. Number one, in spite of all this nonsense from the left, we are going to win. We're in the process of taking this country back. No one in the audience should be despairing. No one should be discouraged. We ought to be really encouraged by what happened yesterday. And in spite of all of the injustice, which of course friends and audience of this show, of our friend Steve know, we are going to prevail. Number two, to the point of the clips and of course your preview of the fact that I am an early American historian and love the Constitution, that Supreme Court ruling yesterday on immunity is vital. And it's vital for a lot of reasons, but I would go to Federalist number 70 if people in the audience are looking for something to read over Independence Day weekend, in addition to rereading the Declaration of Independence. Read Hamilton's number 70, because there, along with some other essays, he talks about the importance of a vigorous executive. You know, former congressman, the importance of Congress doing its job, but we also know the importance of the executive being able to do his job. And can you imagine, Dave Bratt, any president, put politics off to the side, any president having to second guess, triple guess every decision they're making in their official capacity? You couldn't have the republic that you just described. But number three, let me speak about the radical left. You and I have both been parts of faculties and faculty senates and understand that the left has taken over our institutions. The reason that they are apoplectic right now, the reason that so many anchors on MSNBC, for example, are losing their minds daily is because our side is winning. And so I come full circle in this response and just want to encourage you with some substance that we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
What?
Right on. Thank you.
What? So guest hosting that guy is.
Dave Bratt is the guy who beat Eric Cantor back in Virginia. He was served one term, but he was one of the original sort of like Tea Party usurpers. Now he's probably considered a moderate in the context of the Republican Party. But Heritage Foundation, is basically saying we're about to orchestrate a coup. What we're talking about is a radical disassembling of our government. We got a president who is not going to have to second guess what he's doing in any instance because he now has full immunity. Full immunity. And the left will either accept it or we'll take out our weapons. I mean, that's... I want to say that's the subtext, but it's almost the text.
Yeah, it's a threat. It's a threat. It'll remain bloodless. What was the second part of that quote? It'll remain bloodless if they allow it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Any resistance will be met with violence, is what they're saying. And they're saying that's not as some type of like militia. They're saying when we take over the government, if the left has a problem with it, there'll be blood.
Well, and they pose as these freedom lovers, and he cites Hamilton there. A lot of people think of like the founding fathers as just like anti-government people, despite the people who like founded the government. Hamilton and Washington put 13,000 troops into Pennsylvania to impose the whiskey tax, and like I wonder if that's what. If people understand that's what they mean is we're going to use, the military and maybe the National Guards on people who protest and any of this stuff because it's our time.
Well, it's just fascist talk there, and like this is what we have been warning about as it relates to that Project 2025 thing, which is that Trump basically learned from his first time in office that he shouldn't waste any more time.
And he understood what he was capable of doing. And now that's been exacerbated. Let's play this clip of Nina Totenberg. She says this in a more delicate way than I think should be spoken. But what she's basically talking in this clip is that the Supreme Court is largely made up of men who were raised essentially to believe in the authoritarian power of the president. Just recall that, John Roberts was down there in the 2020 election down in Florida. He was one of those lawyers. Kavanaugh was actually worked in the White House, but also worked for Ken Starr. I mean, these guys want to allow the president to wield a tremendous amount of power. Play this Totenberg clip.
If you look at those 5 of those 6 justices spent their entire lives before becoming judges, as most of their lives at least, being acolytes to presidents. They worked in the White House. They worked in the Justice Department in top positions. Brett Kavanaugh was staff secretary, I think was his title. He's the guy who decided what the president and who the president saw and the materials that went into the president. And most of these guys felt for all of their lives that the presidents were being harassed harassed by the opposition party, harassed by plaintiffs, harassed in all kinds of ways that made their jobs very difficult to do. And that is reflected in this decision today. And the only member of the conservative supermajority who dissented at all was Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who did not have that experience.
Well, I don't want to exaggerate her dissent.
She could have actually dissented, by the way. She's
got a more nuanced take, maybe.
But Totenberg's a little bit of an access merchant, a little bit. So.
Yeah.
But here's the point. Totally. And that's why she says it in a much softer way. If the president, and obviously Joe Biden's already announced that he will not engage in this stuff. But if the president feels like there's nothing he can be held accountable for, nothing, absolutely nothing. And of course, he's not going to go and murder somebody when it's Donald Trump. He's too old, too weak. He'll fall over. But if the president feels there's absolutely nothing that he can be held account for, it's not just a question of like, I'm going to spy on this person or I'm going to, monetize the office. It's also, I'm going to order people to do things in the executive agencies that are going to undermine these agencies and maybe in ways that are just not visible at first. And if there's no accountability, that's what we got.
Yeah. So with Project 2025, they're going to stack the administrative state with sycophants and then slash a lot of other jobs. That's the plan. And then as it relates to something like January 6th, I think that's the other under-discussed lesson that Trump learned, which is that he shouldn't have wasted time. He should have used the Insurrection Act and remember in the final days before January 6th when he kept firing and cycling through attorneys general because he wanted so badly to continue trying to overturn the results of an election, but also it was floated by, was it Chesebro that he should, I forget exactly who it was, but I think it was Chesebro, that he should use the Insurrection Act to crack down on people who want to take him out of the White House. Like, that's the lesson that he learned, that we should be doing this more quickly and more efficiently. And that's what should be very terrifying.
One of the things that I think we can look forward to in a Trump administration would be the furtherance of theocracy. Why? Because the Republican Party is very, very dependent on so-called evangelical Christians and Christian nationalists for its votes. And many of its elected officials are also Christian nationalists. Here is Ryan Walters of Oklahoma. He is the Oklahoma Superintendent of Public Instruction. And this is him just about, almost a week ago, announcing at a news conference that Bibles will be required and Bible instruction will be required in schools.
We're going to make an important announcement today regarding the Bible and the Ten Commandments. My staff has been looking at Oklahoma statute. We've been looking at Oklahoma academic standards. And it's crystal clear to us that in the Oklahoma academic standards, under Title 70, multiple occasions, the Bible is a necessary historical document to teach our kids about the history of this country, to have a complete understanding of Western civilization, to have an understanding of the basis of our legal system, and is frankly, when we're talking about the Bible, one of the most foundational documents used for the Constitution and the birth of our country. We also find major points in history that refer to the Bible, that reference the Bible. We see multiple figures, whether we're talking about the Federalist Papers, constitutional conventional arguments, and Martin Luther King Jr., who use it as a tremendous impetus for the civil rights movement and tie many of those arguments back to the Bible. It is essential that our kids have an understanding of the Bible and its historical context. So we will be issuing a memo today that every school district will adhere to, which is that every teacher, every classroom in the state will have a Bible in the classroom and will be teaching from the Bible in the classroom to ensure that this historical understanding is there for every student in the state of Oklahoma in accordance with our academic standards and state law.
All right, so you see the sort of like what is that game where you shuffle the 3-card Monte essentially here that's going on here. It may be the case that the Bible has inspired different historical figures. And so the way that you would discuss the Bible is in the same way that you would discuss any other document that might have inspired people. You'd bring it in the course of studying that person or a particular event. There's no mandatory, we're not mandating, he's not even mandating the Federalist Papers in the classroom. And do we even mandate that the Constitution be on the walls of these classrooms? Probably unlikely.
Well, I mean, if we're talking just historical documents, we should be printing out the Communist Manifesto and putting it all over the classrooms. I mean, come on, it's a historical document.
Say that Martin Luther King was also a Marxist.
Right.
We should. We're going to mandate Marx in every classroom. And
Yeah,
at the very least, and not only is that maybe is a good idea, but the fact is there's no prohibition under the Constitution to imposing Marx on students in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
There is a prohibition for our government to in any way recognize an official religion or to promote religion. And forcing people to read the Bible. And again, first of all, there's multiple versions of the 10 Commandments, depending on what religion you are a part of. There's multiple versions of what constitutes the Bible, depending on what religion you are. Here's that same guy, Ryan Walters, on America's Voice, explaining why he needs to put the Bible in these classrooms.
But the reality is you see the Chinese Communist Party, they're buying up land in America. They are weaponizing and trying to influence anything in America they can. And they are absolutely targeting our schools and our education centers. We saw this with the Confucius Institutes, which, by the way, remember, President Trump clamped down on them. Joe Biden let them back in by loosening those restrictions. And you're seeing in real time here in these last 8 years, Trump presidency puts America first, puts communist China last. And the Joe Biden presidency says, well, we're going to put communist China first, and we'll put the American interest last. So it is so essentially a President Trump back in the White House. It's not the reality.
Well, I mean, that was one of the mistakes I would say that Biden has made. You should not announce that communist China is first and America's last. That's really,
why did Ron Klain advise him to do that?
It's such a dumb thing to do.
Other historical documents I think should maybe be entered into the record is Thomas Jefferson talking to William Short about a syllabus about Jesus, and he says, among the sayings and discourses imputed to Jesus by his biographers, I find in many passages of fine imagination, correct morality, and of the most lovely benevolence, and others again of so much ignorance and so much absurdity, so much untruth, charlatanism, and imposture as to pronounce it impossible that such contradiction should have proceeded from the same being. I therefore separate the gold from the dross. So I mean, the founding fathers were deists, almost all of them, and they would think this guy's a freak.
Also, Oklahoma is 49th in education, according to the Tulsa World local paper there. And notice how he uses how it's foundational for did he say Western civilization? He said that right in that first clip, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, I believe that was, at least in the tweet itself, that is also often what you hear in the defense of Israel by Zionists. And Western civilization is often a substitute for, white supremacy. What'd you say?
White supremacy.
White supremacy, or, like colonial empire or power to wipe out the experiences of people who are either formerly colonized people who have a different religious and ethnic minorities in this country. So just know that dog whistle. Because the reality is that Western civilization was built on chattel slavery, colonialism, and millions of people dying to create these systems. And that's the real history that should be taught. What he's trying to teach is religious propaganda.
And it's kind of rich coming from him, too, because Oklahoma is also the state that just denied the last 2 surviving members of the Tulsa Massacre a appeal for their case for reparations. And also, Ryan Walters, speaking of civil rights, was also the guy who tapped Chaya Raichik, a.k.a. Libs of TikTok, to have a advisory position on a library board in Oklahoma, despite her not living in the state or having any association just besides her being the creator and founder of Libs of TikTok. So,
wasn't this guy also involved, and I can't remember what it was, but there was some refutation about, was it civil rights or the Civil War? I seem to remember this guy at some type of community meeting talking about how, I can't remember. I feel it's a couple of years ago. But I feel like this guy had also made some pronouncements at some type of like community meeting or something to that effect, that was in total denial of sort of the racist past of this country. But he's a rising star in the Republican Party. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. It is Kowalski from the... You know what? Hey, Emma. I guess this is more of an Emma show.
All right.
Well, I just want to say, last caller, I'm sorry for getting upset at you, last caller. I feel badly, actually. I shouldn't get...
The very last caller?
The caller before Kowalski. I shouldn't have got... No, the one before. I shouldn't get upset. I'm in the midst of this, and so I feel badly. I just want to say that.
Oh, no. Don't give them any room to breathe. I love the vengeance art.
Yeah, never apologize, never explain.
Exactly. And I would like to give on this, the eve of our nation's final Independence Day, my belief and why Kamala Harris would make for a good top of the ticket candidate.
All right. You support women. Thank you, Kowalski.
I do. They are the superior of the sexes, clearly. But no, here are my thoughts. When I look at a place like Omaha, I don't see Biden doing anything that could win the place, but I could see Harris, because she would be more aggressive on pro-choice, really winning over those Republican suburban women. Like, what's Biden going to do to advocate to them? And what's Trump going to be able to do? Pretty much nothing. They all despise him. So, she would be better on that. I would imagine that would carry over to a lot of the Midwest.
I want to also just say, Omaha, when you say Omaha, you're talking about an electoral vote, right? I mean, I just want to make that clear that people may not be aware of that.
It would be my dream to make sure that Omaha is like the 271, just because, the amount of hatred towards our system would be so great. It would just be amazing. But also, I think Harris would be good from a business standpoint, because she isn't going to be a threat to the business community. That's the only downside I would see with a Bernie candidate right now, is that would make the business guys upset, because Kamala's not going to do anything to bother them. And frankly, she's going to be far more stable of a figure than Trump. So why would they want somebody who's going to start a trade war with Germany over a tweet or something? That's something that I've heard from a lot of middle management guys, is that it made life a headache, especially with ag stuff, just because trade war with China, turns out, huge buyer of grain and a huge supplier of agricultural parts, pain in the neck if you're in a trade war with them. Probably not a good idea. And lastly, just straight up vengeance. I want to see Senator Kamala Harris out there berating Trump on a debate stage, because Trump has lost a lot of steps. He's got, just like Biden, except he, probably had more stimulants. He's got one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. Like, it's only a matter of time before he slips up. And I think she would do good, and she could bring a level of smugness against him that I don't think he could really counter.
Prosecutor background, that was her best moments in the Senate were when she was questioning somebody fairly aggressively.
She was the only one in the Democratic debate, aside from Bernie, that did well against Biden. Putting her on the ticket was probably a smart move on that. But then, again, we also have to look at if the Europeans are going to go completely right-wing, racist, whatever, them all having to bend the knee to a woman of color in the United States, I mean, coup de grace. That would be amazing. The fact that they have to bend the knee to their protector across the sea, wonderful. There's no downside here. And to be honest, I don't think the whole misogyny thing is going to be as big of a play. I think at the end of the day, a lot of people just don't care anymore. So,
I think statistically speaking,
those guys were never going to vote for him anyways.
I think statistically speaking, it's less of a factor. And I do think the fact that there has not been time to build the narratives around Harris in the same way that there was with Clinton is a factor. And I don't know how this works, but I do think that there was, and maybe things have changed in an era of Trump, and maybe, maybe it's not.
Sorry to cut you off, but something emergency just came up. I have to go. You all have a good 4th of July.
Okay.
Hang in there. Hey.
Where are the libertarians' rights in prosecutor versus criminal? There's some narratives there. That's what I'm saying. The abortion narrative. Look, I don't like the cop stuff, but that plays general election wise, maybe.
Yep. And who knows how.
That's the thing is the Democrats, what is Trump going to do? Say hey, you lost a lot of the left because of you being a prosecutor. The Democrats would love that problem.
Of course.
Please call us too pro-cop.
And what we're seeing, sorry.
I would love to see the data on how race and racism and misogyny play with each other in the course. If she becomes the candidate, hopefully she wins. But I think we would get an opportunity to sort of see how these two things stack upon each other when it comes to having to make a decision like voting. We know what the implications are for Black women within the context of our society. But in the context of someone pulling a lever, there was definitely where people overcompensated for their questions about race in voting for Obama. I think that was definitely a factor in his election. Now, of course, he was running against McCain and Romney, and so they weren't sort of triggering the racists in the same way that Donald Trump was able to. But it'll be interesting to see. But speaking of abortion, the Republicans have decided to have a platform this time around. Last time, you'll recall, their platform in 2020 was, we're just going to support Donald Trump, whatever he says. They didn't feel like they needed to update it. Now there's some fights about that platform. From what I've read, the Trump people have managed to eliminate a couple of anti-abortion people from the platform because Trump is afraid of their freak flag flying too much in this election. And the party platform, it's never binding necessarily, but it becomes a way for either to rally your own troops or to rally troops against you. Now, I don't know how much it's going to help them to not have a platform that reflects the position that they already espouse and everybody knows they espouse and have been responsible for getting rid of an individual right that existed in this country for 50 years. But here is an RNC platform committee member, Ed Martin, who is my understanding, still on the platform. Here is recorded remarks that he made And I don't think it was in the context of the platform. This is from CNN's Andrew Kaczynski.
Tonight, newly uncovered remarks by a key RNC official pushing for some of the most extreme restrictions on abortion. Remarks found by CNN's K-File. Ed Martin is one of just 3 people that the party chose to lead its platform committee. And over the past 2 years, he has advocated for a national abortion ban, no exception for rape or incest.
If the conversation is, well, should there be a federal ban, and the consensus is that there shouldn't, I disagree. I disagree with the consensus. If you ban abortion in Louisiana, is a doctor who has an abortion breaking the law? Yes. Should he be punished? Yes. I think that seems obvious. What is the punishment? Not sure yet. Could be criminal, could be a jail sentence, I suppose. It's an absolute scientific fact that no abortion is ever performed to save the life of the mother. None. Zero. Zilch.
Let's just be crystal clear on that. That last comment is false. Abortion is provided in some cases as a life-saving measure for women. Out front now, Andrew Kaczynski, senior editor of CNN's K-File. So you went and dug through a lot of these comments from Ed Martin's over the last 2 years or so. His views on abortion are, I think extreme actually puts it mildly.
Yeah, that's right. And Ed Martin is a name that you might not know, but this is someone who's going to wield significant influence over the party platform. That's basically the blueprint that the party puts out as their principles, that how Trump is going to govern, how what Republicans are going to run on. And he's one of 3 people selected to help craft it. And his position on abortion is really, it is about as extreme as you can get. He supports a national ban. He doesn't support exceptions for rape or incest. And he even has discussed the possibility of jailing women who get abortion. And this is all coming at a time when Republicans, abortion has really been such a losing issue for Republicans. We've seen Trump sort of try to moderate his rhetoric on abortion, but Martin has actually pushed back on that. He said that Trump isn't trying to water down the party's position on abortion, but some of those views that he supports on abortion, they are so extreme. He has said he does not even support abortion in the case of this 10-year-old Ohio girl who was raped. Take a listen to those comments.
This 10-year-old was brought up as an example of why abortion is necessary. Now, I have said over and over again that, you know, the examples that shouldn't be the rule, right? You can't let the exceptions be the rule, especially when you get engaged in a debate. And I refuse to do it.
I mean, that is really something, because I think we all remember that story. I know you also found some remarks. He talks about the possibility of jailing women, I should say, who've had abortions. I want to play that.
What do you do with the woman that has an abortion? I don't think we have a good answer yet. Some people say that they shouldn't be held liable in any way. Some people say they should have some kind of penalty, something on their record. I don't know. I mean, I certainly think that you're going to find a lot of people that step away from jail time because they're going to say, well, this is, some. But if you believe it's a baby, I do, then you have to do something to protect the baby.
So he doesn't quite have an answer, but it seems even if other people are opposed to it, he's not opposed to jail time.
Well, that's right. And Martin actually compared abortion later on in that radio show from his, that's where we found these clips, to a family that was intentionally starving a child to death. He said the state in that instance would step in. So we compared that to abortion. And he also argued sort of philosophically about jailing women who get abortion. He said you need to frame the argument. And he said if you accept the framing that pro-abortion advocates use, where they say it's about a baby, he says then you can't jail women. But if you use the framing or it's about a woman's choice, but he says if you use this framing that it's about a baby, then he says the discussion of punishment for a woman is something that can be discussed.
That actually is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, that is the point. And this is why, regardless of what any of these anti-abortion fanatics say, this is where it will lead. It has to. Logically speaking, it has to lead that to there for them. It will lead there. I mean, we will see IVF will be gone. There's absolutely, and when you believe that life starts at conception and you believe that only God makes the choice about conception, you will see them go after birth control. And so the guy is actually like, this Ed Martin
Most
is
honest fascist here.
He is honest and fascist, and he is right about where his logic and the logic of the anti-abortion movement in this country leads. He's absolutely right.
And that's why he gets excommunicated in that way, because the entire Republican Party's platform on abortion is built on dishonesty from the beginning. When it was about overturning Roe to leave it to the states. Then the states now have it. They've gotten it. But yet, is the agenda over? Because in theory, that's what I was told my entire life, that was what the Republicans wanted. Make it the states right, which is, that makes it not a right, whatever. Now we see that there's national legislation being discussed within the Republican Party. Lindsey Graham proposed one. And then that's exactly where it leads, because at the end of the day, even though it's unpopular, the base of the Republican Party, a good portion of them are evangelical Christian fundamentalists who believe that abortion is murder. So they have to lie to get to the public, to get the public on their side, which it's interesting how Republicans understand that. Like both the white supremacists who are okay with the dog whistles because they know, well, they have to say that. And the anti-abortion activists, well, they know they have to say that so that they can do what we want to do later. They're primed for the politicians to lie to the public to deliver on their agenda. That's why the Republican Party and their base are fundamentally undemocratic.
Are they losing the patience of that though? This whole thing of okay, we'll not be specific about the platform or whatever. I think aren't we seeing abortion folks being actually maybe we do want this in writing now and we're done taking you for your word?
I mean, look, Trump delivered, and so there's reason why they can be like, oh, we'll take you at your word. But I just want to be clear: Ed Martin is still part of the committee. There were two other people on the platform committee who were taken off, I guess, essentially as some type of compromise to diminish the chances that Ed Martin will carry the day. But they want to be able to give him voice, so he's still there on the committee.
Wow.
It's not a big committee that does the drafting of this 3-person committee. And so, I think there is a little lack of patience on the anti-abortion right, essentially, for Donald Trump getting a little squishy, because they all realize, or at least all the electeds, all realize the bottom line is the American public does not want this. I mean, they understand this, and they realize they have to lie about this this position that they hold that is so fundamental to the Republican Party. Let's go to 404 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Aaron Aaron in Atlanta. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. My phone.
Aaron in Atlanta.
Can you hear me? Yes, sir. It is actually on the chat. It's DSA Aaron.
DSA Aaron. Nice to hear from you.
DSA Aaron. Yes, I've talked to Emma and Matt Bender a few times. I've never could get through Sam. I don't think Sam likes 404 numbers.
Well, you're right. Actually, let me just hang up on that.
What do you got against Atlanta people over here, Sam? What is it?
No, just the 404 numbers. If you have a different exchange from Atlanta, I'm fine.
But I just wanted to call in to talk a couple of things. I wanted to tell Emma she does not need to apologize at all about that misogynist guy that called earlier.
I don't know that he was misogynist necessarily, but you got.
He had some ideas. He didn't sound too great.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, but it's probably best practice for me to just kind of chill out. That's really just a lesson to myself, and I'm not above apologizing.
I understand why why you got upset, though. It makes complete sense to me. But I was wanted to back off something Kowalski said earlier too about Harris. I think she is obviously a much better candidate, because she wins. I mean, Georgia's a swing state. She wins Georgia easily. I'm not saying I have any. I'm not saying I have any. I think she wins it easily. She wins the black vote of Atlanta so easily. It's like she will destroy in Atlanta. It wouldn't even be close, in my opinion. Now, the rural areas would be a different thing, but I think she wins Georgia just based off Atlanta and Macon alone. because those are primarily black areas, and they would definitely vote for her. And they come out in Atlanta to vote. That's why I learned that this year. They did, because I don't know. You wasn't on. We actually got a person in a DSA member that was backed by DSA into took a primary spot of a Democratic, like a corporate Democrat. So we're actually getting stuff done. I think you did talk about it, Sam. I'm sorry, you talked about it later on. I forgot about that, but we actually had another one.
Oh, you there, Aaron?
Oh my gosh!
Oh crap!
He was talking about Gabriel Sanchez, though, with that, which we had played a video, a news report of him winning a primary, a DSA-backed Fulton County race.
Dang, how'd
in
that
Georgia.
happen? I'm sorry, DSA Atlanta. Or Aaron in Atlanta.
After all that 404 talk.
I know.
Calling from
Well,
an 814 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Greg. I'm calling from Jonestown, Pennsylvania.
Greg from Jonestown, Pennsylvania?
Johnstown, yes.
Johnstown. What's on your mind?
Well, I actually wanted to discuss the implications from a common law standpoint of the Magna Carta in regards to the recent immunity. Actually, no, I just wanted to mention something about the debate.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. Okay, so I consider myself a fairly high information voter. You know, my family was always, I'm 45 years old. I remember my parents discussing watching politics. I got a poli-sci degree. When, people online would say you're a George Soros shill, that was actually correct for me. Right after college, I worked for America Coming Together as a George Soros operation in the 2004 elections. So I consider myself fairly high information. I try to keep up on things. I watch your show, watch common media, read things. I agree with you guys. A lot of times I'm probably 50% progressive, 50% liberal. One place I've disagreed with you guys traditionally, I've always felt Joe Biden was actually a pretty strong candidate to go against Trump. I just felt like he had a certain, whatever it was, energy that was actually a good counterbalance for Trump. The things that hurt Joe Biden, like him tending to be dishonest, kind of didn't matter against Trump because Trump was so much worse and all of those factors.
Yeah.
But,
by the way, caller agreed with you in 2020
Sure.
once he got to the well, maybe, I don't know, at some point. I think that you were absolutely right in 2020. And by this time in 2020, he was up 7-8 points in some national polls against Trump.
Yeah. I mean, and I actually felt in 2016, obviously, even though I'm probably a little bit close to center, I did still want Bernie to get in there. But I remember when Hillary became the established candidate, thinking, I think Biden would be a better establishment candidate at that point. But, I watched the debate just like everyone else, and I was concerned for all the same reason you guys were. But, and also think good for a president to be fully functioning, and I'm not sure if he's 100% there. And I was really concerned about people's reaction. And what I'll say is, outside of my circle of friends who are also highly politically motivated, people didn't care nearly as much as I thought it did. And I'm not saying it's not going to matter, and obviously we're seeing polling data shows it does at least matter somewhat. But there was no buzz on Facebook, which, my Facebook is just feeds of people I know from the gym, things like that. I haven't heard anybody talking about it in person, so it didn't resonate quite as much as I thought. And my only thinking is, every time I would see clips of, Joe Rogan saying, Biden, he's completely demented. Look, he's trying to shake hands with a ghost. I would go back and I would look and I would see the full context in the clip, and it looks like Biden was just making a gesture to some guy off stage, But I think most people already have it in their heads, and have for a while, that Joe Biden has a little bit of dementia, which I don't think he's at the point of having demented even after that debate. But so I don't know if it necessarily took on as big a significance as I initially feared. Having said that, it was certainly not good. And my only hope is if he does stick around for the debate, that it was a case of, him combination being over prepped, taking the wrong approach, trying to turn him into a policy wonk at 81, and maybe he took cold medicine. I don't know. That's my only hope, that he could at least rebound from it if he's got to stay in.
Well,
but at this point, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if Trump does pick up another 3 or 4 points, even if Biden is a lot better, and there's a case of the cold and cold meds and all that, some people are saying, even if that's the case, will Trump even give him another opportunity to debate, or will Trump, because I could see if Trump starts pulling the lead, he's going to say, well, there's no reason to give him, just like Trump hasn't announced his VP, their original plan, I'm sure, was to, if this debate went bad, boom, hit the VP. That way everybody will be talking about that.
Yeah.
But it didn't, so they're leaving the talk.
Yeah, Emma actually made that. Let me just respond to what you're saying. Emma made that point actually before the show. It was saying, he's smart enough to know not to step on the story right now because the story is Joe Biden. Let me just say this: is that I certainly entertain the possibility that low information voters, people who are that engaged may have a different reaction to this debate than others. And I think the reaction probably in terms of looking at sheer numbers is not as intense as at moments I thought oh my God, he's going to lose 10 points. I think there's a lot of people who will vote for a can of beans against Donald Trump. It doesn't matter whatsoever. But I think the point is ultimately is that he's lost. It's clear from the polling that the debate not only did not help him, but at least marginally hurt him. And there is no evidence. This is the thing that really strikes me. What you could be saying about his performance in the debate, what could be theoretically, okay, let's be as generous as we can here, a function of he said, I've been traveling around the world, his clock is still messed up, and he took cold medication and poorly prepped and all this. If all those things were the case, and he comes out on Friday and he does, what do you want? 2-hour press conference, hour-long press conference, takes a bunch of questions, extemporaneously shows that, okay, that was a one-off. Then I think you'd have some, a little more substance to that argument. But it's been now almost a week since the most disastrous debate performance in the history of debates. And for a candidate who was already underperforming where we want him to be, and we see now the polls trickling in, we see the campaign was completely ineffective in pushing back on the narrative that just kept developing. And they didn't reach out to lawmakers. They didn't reach out to the leaders of the party because of either A, incompetence, or B, they couldn't do it confidently. And so it is a calculated guess that there's something that is a little bit deeper going on with Biden, that he doesn't have the skill set to go out and campaign, and certainly not to go out and campaign with this type of sort of narrative deficit. He can't seem to overcome it. Appreciate the call.
No, and I largely agree. Appreciate the call, and I appreciate the work you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I think both what you're saying and what I've been saying and what the caller was saying can be true as well, which is that I think we could maybe reckon with some of our own insulation. At least I was more dismissive about that Wall Street Journal report about his cognition because the sourcing was weird. It didn't necessarily seem like the anecdotes were that concrete. And a lot of the complaints on, say, Fox News were about how he's only using a teleprompter at these fundraisers. Well, I'm old enough to remember the teleprompter obsession with Obama and with Hillary. I mean, this is something Fox News engages in regularly. I'm kicking myself for not being more critical in that way, I think. It also could be that the general public already thinks he's senile and doesn't want to vote for him because they see the videos on TikTok or
people
whatever.
Were not prepared for what they saw on Thursday. I don't think that is true.
I'm just saying I was open to the possibility that had already been in some way a part of like the apathy
into the
towards
cake.
him. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
of course, this was historic, and that's what we've been trying to say all week.
I will also say, though, I mean, I'm old enough to remember Reagan, and Reagan was, I don't know if he was lucid, you know. I mean, he was for those last couple of years, at the very least, of his presidency. I don't know if he was in, you know, how lucid
Leslie
he
Stahl
was.
said she's basically just completely like blank and out there in the mid 80s, like 86 or something like that.
Yeah,
and if Reagan, but Reagan was going into that re-election effort with extremely high approval ratings, ended up winning in a landslide. And
no, but my point being, like, I'm not even sure, frankly, how much those faculties are important for a, you know, I mean, those faculties are important for an administration that's already sort of shown what they can do. I mean, again, put aside some of the foreign policy stuff, obviously the rabid support for what Israel's doing. Domestically speaking, I like the Biden program. I would like it to have been more successful on Build Back Better, but broadly speaking, best presidency in terms of material benefits and changes, and even, like, you know, when it comes to support of labor and antitrust and appointment of justices, of judges rather, nothing comes close in my lifetime. And if the people around him continue to do that, and he's just sitting there, you know, so that he can stroke people's face when they come into the Oval Office, then fine. But the problem is he can't win in this way.
Yeah.
And all he has shown with that debate performance is a failure to have the ability to win. And he's had a week long of opportunity to come back out and say that was a one-off. And they have not put him in a situation where he could prove it. And the only situation has got to be one where it's like sort of live questioning.
he can't do it.
He's not capable.
I agree, but I think like they're won't do it, can't do it is the exact same thing at this juncture. And I suspect he won't do it because he can't do it.
They're projecting strength now. They're saying that they're on the ticket together. They're telling that to the staff. They'll do that until the 11th hour.
Or unless they do the switcheroo.
You know how Biden's egos to be the vice president again. He already was seething that he was basically boxed out because of a backroom deal between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama when she was made Secretary of State after that knockdown drag-out primary in 2008 when Hillary ran a super racist campaign against Obama. I think people forget that, but the way he talks about himself in the press of like, hey, I've been counted out my whole life. He feels like
most of the time they were right.
Most of the time, but he feels there's no way he's switching into the vice presidency.
Look, we don't know his ego, but let's assume for a moment that it is as you say. I'm not sure that it doesn't feed his ego to be like, she can't do this without me. So I get it that maybe I am, there's all these people who have a complaint with like me as a campaigner. Okay, fine. But let's be honest. She can't do this without me. I need to be vice president. I mean, I think that's a little bit like West Wingy, wish casting, but it's not inconsistent with someone who believes that they are absolutely essential to the future of the country, clinging on in that way. And maybe, Hunter's probably like, if I'm Hunter, I'm going like, whatever can keep you close to the seat of power, Dad.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like West Wing is better than this Righteous Gemstones Act we got going on with Hunter Biden and all of the things like, I don't know, giving his dad moral support. Be like, good, yeah, Dad, you're an underdog.
You're right. Don't do it, Dad. I mean, look, I'm just coincidentally, I may need, pardon me, my art dealer contract is completely contingent upon being president. Or in the White House. So it really doesn't matter which wing. All right, let's do this. Story in the AP today. that Alaska's Juneau ice field, which is home to more than 1,000 glaciers, the melting that's taking place there is accelerating. The snow-covered area is now shrinking 4.6 times faster than it was in the 1980s. This has been meticulously, the snow levels have been meticulously tracked in this 1,500 square mile area, going back to 1948 with added data back to the 18th century. So if you're one of those religious zealots who's like, you can't see it, we didn't see it. It's just an indicator. There is, I think, widespread acknowledgement in the scientific community that our 1.5 Celsius goal is going to be blown through. And there's some that are saying now that we may get to 4 degrees of temperature change by the end of the century, which would be catastrophic. Catastrophic beyond the catastrophes we've been talking about. However, there are some people who still reject the idea that climate change is man-made. It's just God, apparently, who's doing this. The idea that all of the greenhouse gases have spiked since the industrial era is just a coincidence. It's God's way of saying, I like what you're doing, and I have no other way to indicate it. But when I get so excited about what you're doing, I get hot, and then the earth gets hot. That's what happens. Here's Dave Rubin.
To work together to share it.
That, of course, was Bill Nye, the science guy. Is there anyone out there in the public sphere that wears the bow tie that's not a total dickbag? Is there anyone what are you doing, dude? I'm pretending to be a scientist. Look at me with my bow tie.
I am waiting for Dave Rubin to address Tucker Carlson, whose entire career was built upon a bow tie, to the extent that when I started Air America, I wore a bow tie just to confuse people when I went on cable television, because people would see the bow tie first. It was completely responsible for his entire career.
I think he's sneak dissing Tucker because he's not happy with some of the recent programming Tucker's been doing. I genuinely think that's not an oversight.
That could be interesting, right? Maybe about, Dave's a big Zionist. Perhaps Tucker Carlson venturing into his anti-Semitic, anti-Israel stuff, right, is getting him a little upset.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good take, Matt.
Bill Nye, the science guy. Is there anyone out there in the public sphere that wears the bow tie that's not a total dickbag? Is there anyone what are you doing, dude? I'm pretending to be a scientist. Look at me with my bow tie. Scientists don't even wear bow ties. Real scientists don't wear bow ties. They wear the white jacket and they have big glasses. I don't believe in man-made.
All right, I just realized, no, Matt, he's too stupid to be doing that.
I just wanted to say, he's the dumbest human being.
There's no...
It's just so, he's...
Matt, you were on to something if he had,
They wear white jackets and big glasses?
Yeah.
I know he's half joking, but he's not. There's half of him that's not joking.
Look at you wearing that helmet, astronaut. Do astronauts even wear helmets? What is that? It's bizarre.
Go ahead.
Be a scientist. Look at me with my bow tie. Scientists don't even wear bow ties. Real scientists don't wear bow ties. They wear the white jacket and they have big glasses. I don't believe in man-made climate change. I'm just telling you, I don't. That'll probably get me canceled more than anything else I've ever said on this show. The world sometimes warms and sometimes it cools. And in the 70s, they said we were
I'm sorry,
having
we can go back, but he's doing that tone of voice when that girl from the whatever show, Straighteraid, said, "Hey, will you debate?" Somebody's like, "Nah, it's so boring."
He's a terrible person.
Yeah, you can almost feel his throat tightening. And I think part of that is because maybe he doesn't believe what he's saying, and he knows he's just decided I'm going to do. Because he's been doing this for 10 years now, and he's just now coming out with climate change is not man-made. This is going to get me
Or was
canceled.
that at TYT?
what new information have you gotten in the past 10 years that makes you believe that climate change is not man-made?
He moved to Florida, and the waterfront property did not go underseas like his buddy who won't go to his wedding, Ben Shapiro, predicted, right?
I mean, try getting insurance in Florida.
Yeah.
Ask them if they think climate change is real.
Exactly.
And, well, he's saying it's not man-made, but the funny thing is that the way that he's going to refute that climate change is man-made is to say that in the 70s they thought it was cooling. But what does that have to do with it being man-made? Well, go ahead.
I don't believe in man-made climate change. I'm just telling you, I don't. That'll probably get me canceled more than anything else I've ever said on this show. Like, yeah, the world sometimes warms and sometimes it cools. And in the 70s, they said we were having global cooling. And even if I believed any of it was true, the idea that AOC and her Green New Deal and John Kerry and Bill Nye the Science Guy and Neil deGrasse Tyson and a bunch of these abject buffoons could do anything about it, I'll take my chances. And you know what? If all hell starts breaking loose here, pretty sure I can message Elon and get on a flight to Mars. So we'll be okay. And I'll get you guys on too. Obviously, I'll take care of the people I know. And any of you would be welcome to come with us too. Anyway, they lie about everything.
Okay,
Check out, this is great.
We got to go back here because this is really amazing.
Wow.
First off, he says he doesn't believe in man-made climate change. And then he basically says, I don't believe in climate change. Right? Because he's going back and forth. It's cold, it's hot, it's this and that. And then he says, but even if climate change is real, the idea that these 5 people who I don't like can do something about it is ridiculous. And well, these 5 people can't do anything about it. We're going to actually need a lot of government action and a lot of government's action on top of which. And then he says, and if it all goes south, look, the stakes for me are low because I'm friends with a billionaire and I can leave. And then he realizes, like, oh, I'm talking to an audience of people who aren't friends with a billionaire. And if the stakes are low for you, we'll invite you on.
Is he friends
too.
with Elon? Is he friends with Elon?
I don't
All right,
know.
I'm going to lay out 2 scientific scenarios here, and Dave can take me seriously as a real scientist because I'm not wearing a bow tie. One is that climate change is man-made and exacerbated by fossil fuels that we're pumping out into the atmosphere, as acknowledged by ExxonMobil and in their internal documents that are now leaked, that they knew back in the 70s when he's talking about the effects of their product on the world, and that scientific consensus has surrounded that. There's one possibility that that's happening, or that we can all go within Dave Rubin's lifetime and live on Mars and colonize it. Those are 2 scenarios involving scientific activity. Which one of those do you think is more likely, Sam? Posing a question.
No one's getting to Mars.
I'm already practicing breathing shallow in a shallow fashion so that I can do well on Mars. But wait a second. Here, I want you to do, Emma, you be Dave Rubin, and I'll be Elon Musk. Who gets the request to take Dave Rubin up to Mars in my limited capacity spaceship. Let's say I have a room for, 1,000 people on my spaceship to go to Mars. Okay.
Hey, buddy, will you let me on your spaceship? And the things are not going so well on this planet. Like, can I tag along?
No. No.
I mean,
I'm not
we should
you,
just
Dave.
say
Absolutely not. No, sorry. First of all,
Dave, no.
Dave, first off, you're too stupid to add anything to our society, A. And B, also, you're not heterosexual and we need to breed more. So,
well, I can be heterosexual. I mean, I just want to hang out. Like, I mean, I've never sworn off women. Like, they're very, very sexy, those women.
Cat Turd has already taken your spot.
Oh.
If there's anybody who needs to hear it, probably a young man, you are not going to Mars. You're not. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Put it on your mind. Let's try to make this world better. Not even your favorite billionaire. None of them are getting to Mars. They're not. No. It's not happening. It's not happening.
They're just going to be in an underground bunker in New Zealand, and then they're just going to have to figure out a way of growing their own food underground. Just go back. That moment where Rubin realizes, oh, I've just basically said to my audience, The real reason why I don't care about this is that I think that I'm somehow invulnerable to it because I've got an out and you don't. Wait a second. I mean, you guys can come too.
The buffoons could do anything about it. I'll take my chances. And you know what? If all hell starts breaking loose here, pretty sure I can message Elon and get on a flight to Mars. So we'll be okay. And I'll get you guys.
Negative.
No. And any of you would be welcome to come with us too. Anyway, they lie about everything. Check out, this is great from Dr. Eli David. This is wonderful. This is it's a compilation of articles and studies in the mainstream media where they say that basically
He basically goes on to say that everyone keeps saying that it's the hottest, X on record. And how could it possibly be the hottest thing on record for every place? Like hottest day in Mexico, hottest day in Netherlands.
It's because they're doing aggregates, you stupid, stupid man. They're doing aggregates. They're aggregating the heat data from the world. What is what? I mean, this is the version. It's funny. He's really coming this is like what you're hearing some of these narratives on crime. It's one way in my backyard, but it's like but with the national trends going down, I don't know. How can you tell?
Oh, geez. It's already 2:45, almost 2:42. Folks, I'm afraid that is it for our call-in portion of the program. I know people were hanging on for a long time. I was hoping to get to a lot more calls. Best laid plans.
And that hope springs eternal, Sam.
And that hope does spring eternal. Maybe we'll do an extra day of calls sometime next week. Who knows?
Because you're not having real conversations.
Can you believe that was only 1 year ago? No. That thing. So much has happened.
Progressives are actually regressing.
Kanye will be looked at as someone that saved the Jews.
I'm not a respected source of information, even for me.
We having a war now?
This is not beanbag.
Oh, wow. Yep.
You don't respect the rule of law. You've shat all over it. That's what you did. And we know it now.
We know it now.
And I don't really have any insight into anything.
There you go. All right, let's read some IMs. Dave from Jamaica. Shofar for dodging the hurricane so far. You got it, buddy. Complainer. Nice open calls Friday. What did you do? 5 calls? Joe Biden was. Come on, man. Well, it wasn't. I wasn't. It's not Friday.
It's just, I wish we could have like a fly on the wall when Sam says, Emma, I'm planning on opening up the phone lines like in the first hour. And it's never happened. We get to 1 p.m. every time. It's never happened. It's like, why set the intention?
What did Sam say? We're going to do like whatever the things we did and then get the calls quick. And I'm like, oh yes, around 1:30 then.
I know, but you said that off mic and I was like, don't let Sam hear it because then he'll be reminded. I like when you set it up and it never works out. It tickles my funny bone.
Someday. Everybody has to have their white whale. That's
right.
What it is for me. DSA Aaron in Atlanta. Ruben isn't a man. He's a stupid F. Hellboy. I'm going to have to order the military to assassinate Donald Trump, then bow out. Have fun, Kamala. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Check out Zogby's interview on Democracy Now! Per presidential immunity, Roberts has said it's okay for a president to have a rival assassinated. You really need to listen to Zogby's proposal that money can be dispersed if Kamala has to run too. Please check it out. He's written, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that. Okay. Vinny P. I predict Biden will either drop out in the next few days or on July 19th after the RNC to capitalize on the media attention.
Good prediction.
I don't
But
know.
they
if
don't.
it
But
works in
Democrats
the
are
same
bad
way.
at politics. Yeah. Sorry.
I don't know if it works in the same way. If you really want, to distract from the RNC at that point. Although I will say this, there is a lot to be said to have them do an entire convention about how Joe Biden is the wrong person to run, and then on the 19th announce Joe Biden's not running.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting theory.
That's also the advantage of this too, is that we're catching maybe the Republicans a little bit flat-footed.
Well, someone was saying someone said on Twitter, which I'm not sure who it was, but they were basically saying if it happens and that Kamala does replace Biden, and ultimately the election is won in November by the Democrats, it actually might have been a big mistake of Trump's to agree to a debate in June for us to see how diminished Biden was to make the choice to then potentially save the ticket.
100%.
But obviously all of that's very speculative, but I'm just saying, looking at that, like even the fact that this conversation is being had, it wouldn't have happened earlier had we not had a late June debate.
And I'm curious if there was anybody in Biden world that was pushing for that with with two scenarios in mind, with one trying to remind the public about Trump to create the stakes of the election, and two to be like, that's too much.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. I mean, it's just who would be incentivized to do that? Somebody working for Biden? I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't think so.
I think that's fair. Right.
It is funny though, because there are a lot of people who were floating that as a conspiracy theory, and they may have actually ended up being correct, just in a different way than they thought.
Mm-hmm.
Nick from PA, the whole MR staff take the day off so everyone bad in the world passes away. Thanks for your work. WTF Cody, I'm from southeastern Kentucky, and there was a rare and intense hatred for Hillary Clinton that go on for years before I was even born. Yeah. People literally think she eats children and doses up on adrenochrome. Yeah. There was a quality about Hillary Clinton where the misogyny had morphed into something just beyond. Dan from Windsor, we should all support Mamala because it would be hilarious to see not only Trump lose to a black woman, but to have Hillary Clinton live to see the first woman president, and it's not her. Buzz.
That is funny.
I did see that, yeah.
Hogtown, Italian Democrats, I'm lighting a candle to La Mondana Law. Oh, I see. Dragon Rider. He's actually being brave. He's going to be boring, bro, soon. Boeing, the plane company that kills people. Kamala didn't self-describe as a Zionist, at least. Tim Pools Rogaine. Found out my friends are Jimmy Dore fans. I told them to listen to MR, in which they responded, you must listen to Jimmy Dore, right? We love him. I laughed and said, no, he peddles silver. I don't think they're political, but anti-vax. Oh, well.
I often find a lot of people who are quote unquote Jimmy Dore fans don't follow every episode and are surprised. I mean, some of them do, but some of them are surprised to hear him doing sort of paralegal for Kyle Rittenhouse stuff, and I mean the Candace Owens thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he kind of blew his thing with his reaction to George Floyd.
Jonathan Armstead, if I were a betting person, I'd say that Biden's using the George Stephanopoulos interview to announce he's stepping down. I would take that bet and say you're wrong. I think if he announces he's going to step down, I have a feeling he'll do it from the Oval Office, I think, and make the speech himself unmediated.
It's too early for him to have processed this to do that at this point, and they're going to want as much data as they can.
Serwer of The Atlantic is calling for Biden not to just drop out of the campaign, but also to resign as president. I am not in favor of that. Space Lenin. NEA Educators for Palestine demonstration today at 4:30 at the Philly Convention Center, Arch Street entrance. We need support. That's at 4:30 p.m. at the Philly Convention Center, Arch Street entrance. You can make it now if you go. All right, 4 more.
Some big marches for Palestine on July 4th throughout the country tomorrow, by the way, too.
And if you go out and post online about it, tag us.
Zane, anecdotally, the women in my life are more fired up about this election than the men. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's abortion. It's easy. I don't know. Creates
Ryan,
urgency.
the Mainer. All right, F it. You guys have convinced me. K-Hive all the way. Haha,
Let's
Jared
go.
Golden is loving this crap.
Coconuts for lunch. Coconuts
We
for
need
dinner.
you to be mamala of the country.
I'm coconut pilled, baby.
Son of Mamala. Ryan Grimm just tweeted Harris fame ticket. There's historical precedent. Google John of Bohemia.
I think Fane's where he needs to be.
Yeah. Pete the Cat. The issue with making Biden VP is he still needs to have a VP debate. Do we really want to see how he will perform?
That's so good.
That's a good point.
Could be interesting if. Oh, sorry. Go on.
This caller claims to be high information, but he's out of touch with the caller you've had in weeks. Delusional. Go ahead, Emma.
No, I just if they pick someone like who I saw, Andy Bashir was on cable news. He's trying to throw his hat out there, like young red state Democratic governor versus J.D. Vance. It's kind of an interesting debate. I don't mind that matchup at all.
He's even in a state that's more to the south too.
Borders Ohio.
Exactly.
I know the switcher Midwest fella. I know the switcheroo thing is half or less serious, but really, why would it allay anyone's fears to have the president be a heartbeat away from a VP who we think is either mentally compromised and or having one foot in the grave? I don't know that it's a smart idea. I'm suggesting like the question is like whether that would be Biden's price. I think probably no, and it's a half a joke, but it's not inconceivable that he'd be like, I don't want to go quite yet, but all right, two more. Nate Silver's sweaty abacus. Don't know what it matters, but the KamalaForPresident.com domain registration info was just updated.
Let's
need you
go.
to be mamala of the country.
I'm sorry, I stepped on it.
And the final IM of this shortened week, ladies and gentlemen, at least for the live show, we will be back on Friday with an interview with Rick Perlstein. And also we will include in a freebie Friday, not just the actual debate with Jimmy Dore, but the lead up to it from 2016, September of 2016, where we're talking about the import of electing Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, in large part just around the judiciary. Final IM, Kyle from Montreal, Dave Rubin coming after a beloved children's television personality and savior of boring science classes is maybe the stupidest thing I have seen him do.
Mm-hmm.
Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job this week. Great job to John Aarons doing our booking, Dorsey Shaw doing our YouTube stuff, Isaac working on a lot of different things in the back end, including the descriptions, Chris and Maria on YouTube, Julie in the back office in our financial section and accounting, Kelly, also Corey and Jacob, of course. And as always, Kyle, thank you for everything. Folks, we will see you. We'll be back here Friday, and then we'll be back live on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made for the shifted